Hello and welcome to a Review to a Kill, the James Bond retrospective podcast where we rewatch every Bond from Connery to Craig to review and rank each one. I'm your host, Special Agent Sedgwick, and returning for this debrief is an agent whose itchy trigger finger might have actually been a psychopath flag this entire time.
Chris Carter. And I can't help it.
Today, we are reviewing Goldeneye, the 17th Bond outing from Eon Productions, the first in the series to not utilize any plot elements at all from works of Fleming. It was also the first James Bond film not produced by Albert R. Broccoli, who I erroneously said would die between the last film and this one. Cubby was still involved with this film as a consultant, but it was his final film project before his death in '96, and he was not the main producer.
The title was taken from Fleming's estate in Jamaica.
This film was released after a 6-year hiatus in the series, caused by legal disputes, creating a staggering leap in cinematic quality as we instantly jump from the late 80s to mid-90s. Dalton's contract would also expire, but Babs asked him back.
This movie was not just a leap in quality. This movie was a leap in everything.
The early draft they had kicking around from 1990 to 93 was a bit of a proto-Goldeneye that had a failed mission to start and bad guy surviving death to come after Bond in what was being written as an almost Act 3 to Dalton's first two Bond outings. But Babs also wanted Dalton for at least 4 to 5 more movies, and Dalton was out. Before negotiating with Brosnan, though, Mel Gibson, Hugh Grant, and Liam Neeson passed on the role. Cubby met with Ralph Fiennes for the role. And while he wouldn't play Bond, he would eventually play M.
I'm going to agree with all of those passes and Ray Fiennes.
The hiatus also caused Pinewood to be booked, and they turned the Leavesden Aerodrome into a fully functioning studio. Stages and offices and everything from the giant factories. They called it Cubbywood, but you may know it today as Warner Brothers Studios Leavesden.
Holy mackerel. That's incredible.
The film was the first Bond to feature CGI. Derek, the king of forced perspective model work Meddings, was engaged in post-production on the film, on which his sons also worked, when he died of colorectal cancer. A dedication in the credits reads, "To the memory of Derek Meddings."
At least he went out on a high note. The model work was impeccable in this, and some of the best I've seen in a James Bond movie ever.
The film premiered at the Radio City Music Hall in New York on the 13th of November, 1995. Reception was mostly positive, and the film was a critical and commercial success. There were some people 30 years ago complaining about how Bond was now out of his era and chasing trends, while others complained that this lacked the humor of Roger's Bond. Retrospective reviews have been overwhelmingly positive, with the film often ranking in the top 10 of media articles.
This was one of the best Bond movies I've ever seen. Hands down. Just as a nostalgia factor, being a big fan of video games and stuff, this brought back so many good memories. I forgot how much I like GoldenEye.
Made for $60 million, it made $356.4 million in the box office. The film was nommed for 2 BAFTAs, 2 Saturns, and an MTV Movie Award. The real award, for the best fight.
Oh, at the time, the MTV Movie Awards was the real awards.
I mean, in the 90s, it was.
Fuck those Oscars. That was People's Choice Awards right there.
Presented by Cubs Brock, produced by Babs Brock and Mike Wilson, finally starring Pierce Brosnan.
I love me some Pierce Brosnan James Bond.
My mom said that she wanted him to be James Bond forever.
That's pretty much how everybody who was a Remington Steele fan felt at the time.
Yep.
Why isn't this dude James Bond?
The dots roll out, and the Bond theme hits with that pure 90s style. The music is so iconic because of that N64 game, and to be fair, it's because it almost already sounds like video game music. It's cool, smooth, almost industrial techno. The Bond plate is the sharpest we've ever seen it. The background is white, and I mean white for once. The barrel plate and the blood are CG for the first time, and they are also the sharpest and cleanest we've ever seen them. Brosnan's walk and firing stance are the best so far. Not a single complaint.
His stance was a little wide for my taste. I mean, he stood straight up facing the gun barrel. That's Hollywood, full pose forward. Otherwise, this is super clean.
I'm just used to ballerina pirouettes and people hopping.
Yes, hopping and jazz hands and all that other stuff. The music is definitely techno. It's not even almost industrial techno. It's techno. And I liked it. It was good.
The dot reveals a Pilatus P6 turbo porter flying over the dam at Arkangel Chemical Weapons Plant in 1986 at Soviet-era Arkhangelsk. This is the real-life Versaska Dam, or Contra Dam, in Lake Lurkano, Vigorno, Switzerland.
This is a huge dam.
We see Bond run to the center of the dam and attach himself to a platform to bungee jump. They spend so long establishing how tall this fucking dam is, then this overhead shot here makes it look short with the fucked up perspective of the stairs.
Yeah, that's weird, kind of. I don't know why they would do that.
It's because they composited this shot and it's hella zoomed. Tourist photos from the top of the dam are much more dizzying. Bond jumps after a sweet reveal of his face, and the jump is also sweet. They use a lot of compositing in this, but technology has made that far less noticeable. Except for this shot when Bond's firing his grapple walther into the top of the facility bathroom.
Huh.
Bond cuts his way through the roof and follows the vent in, which unfortunately for him, and fortunately for us, leads to a stall currently being occupied by Piotr and his IBS.
Now, are you sure Piotr has IBS? Because he's always there in the game, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
This is one of the most iconic Bond openings ever.
This was before smartphones, so Piotr has a newspaper up and Bond drops behind it saying, "Beg your pardon, forgot to knock," and decks the man. There's a cool shot of him right here. In fact, there's a cool shot of him here. There's so many amazing shots. They were so focused on using the camera and blocking to make him look cool, instead of just using swagger and charm. The cinematography here is the first time ever it's not mostly flat throughout the film, and it helps make you feel as if you're there looking up at him from a perspective angle as he comes down the stairs. Almost all blocking ends in a cool pose. There's actually color grading for the first time. This is very good shit. It's beyond next step. They skipped grades with this. The first true modern Bond in terms of filmmaking.
I would have to agree. They definitely did not hide his face. They wanted to make it pretty clear Pierce Brosnan is the new James Bond. Pose, corner pose, run around the corner, pose, and pose again. But it looked good. It was a really nice scene. It was cool. I really dig this opening title sequence. Lots of action.
Bond sneaks his way into a storage closet, and from the shadows, a man draws on him and yells, "What are you doing here? Where are your companions?" in Russian. Bond says coolly, "I'm alone." And the shadowed man lowers his gun, stepping out, saying, "Aren't we all? You're late, 007. Bond says he had to stop in the bathroom. "Ready to save the world again?" "After you, 006. We then cut to the two opening a grate, and 006 says, "For England, James?" And Bond says, "For England, Alec." So, this is Alec Trevelyan, 006, played by Sean Bean, so you know he's gonna die.
I looked it up. Sean Bean has died in a quarter of his movies.
Well, in this one, he makes up for it a little bit because it's a death so nice they kill him twice.
Yeah.
They wanted someone around Bond's age, and they wanted to use constant forced banter to make it seem like these two have worked together a few times and work well together on a near equal skill level.
They did a good job kind of portraying that. This is definitely Bond's equal. Seems a little more ruthless, but still gets the job done.
All of this is now shot in the factory studios, by the way, and later, when he's chasing the plane, it's outside of the factory on the runways. In fact, almost all interior scenes in this movie are shot in the factory that they dubbed Cubbywood.
Oh, really? That's pretty tight.
The sets, we could go on and tell you each time and break down how they're amazing, but the fact that they don't look like sets most of the time is enough praise.
Just illustrates how amazing. Yeah, you're not wrong. Some of those sets are like, I don't know, next level. This whole movie is next level.
Bro, they built a town.
Right?
Bond and Alec move through the facility to complete their list of mission objectives when Alec shoots a lab tech, because Alec plays on agent mode where he's allowed a couple of those before failing.
Yes, he does play on agent mode.
Bond plays on 007 mode and can't fuck around like that, so he just hacks the door into the main chemical storage bay. They discover no one in the bay, and Bond says it's too easy. Alec says half of everything is luck, James, as he moves to relock the door with the hacking device. And James asks him, "And the other half?" And the alarm blares, and Alec says, "Fate." So I'm going to jump ahead here and set the stage for you. Alec here is the bad guy. I know, spoiler. He's shot by Uramov here and blown up. And then later he suggests that this mission was his plan to fake his death and lead Yanis. The only hitch was Bond switching the timers from 6 to 3 minutes and not giving him enough time to escape. In fact, this explains why a spy can be shot, found alive after his team destroys a base, and just end up their boss. He was already their boss. He also said he thought of asking James to join, but knew he would never betray his queen. But he also definitely hates Bond for the timer thing, so that thought had to be before the betrayal. And then there's this deleted scene, which they probably took out for a reason, that shows that Alec was legit shot in the head by Ourumov, and that they never really say for sure if he was already in Yanis in 1986 either. So, long story short, Alec triggered the alarm here with the intentional bot's job on the door hacker.
Well, of course he did. He's the bad guy. They established that later.
Shakily.
Yes.
As I just pointed out.
Shakily.
The alarms blare, and Alec tells Bond to set timers 6 minutes. Bond goes around planting chargers on tanks. Alec gut shoots soldiers that enter the room and descend the bottleneck stairs. Closing time, James. Last call. Buy me a pint. This one, of all their banter, is actually pretty clever. Alec just said, wrap it up, B, and James said, not finished yet.
Right? Their little code banter, which they try to establish pretty much early through, but
This one actually just works, has like meaning behind it instead of them just saying shit.
yes, this one really drives it kind of home.
Colonel Ourumov, played by the absolutely perfect Gottfried John, shouts out for Bond to come out with his hands up, to which Bond muses, how original. A jammed door is blown and more Russian soldiers file in. Bond screams for Alec to shut the door. There's a draft. And when Alec doesn't respond, Bond slowly moves out to investigate, finding Alec on his knees with Ourumov over him with a gun to Alec's head. Ourumov tells James to come out and surrender, and Alec says, finish the job, James, blow them all to hell. So, I mean, right there, he literally told him to do what he does. I'm just saying.
Right. Just run off and leave him here to die.
He said, finish the job, blow them to hell. What do you expect him to do? You just told him to do it. Bond cuts the timer from 5 minutes, 36 seconds to 3 minutes. So later, when Alec gives Bond 3 minutes, he should have given him another 24 seconds to be fair.
I guess.
Ourumov counts down from 10, and at 2, Alec says, for England, James, and is seemingly shot in the head in front of Bond. Bond hides behind a rolling rack of gas tanks and walks slowly to the edge of the room. A soldier gets an itchy trigger finger like Carter and pops off at Bond, and Ourumov executes the soldier before exhaling sharply.
Well, he doesn't want to get blown up. I think he did the right thing.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying I disagree with Ourumov or I would have done anything different. Bond hits the edge of the room, and when Ourumov says, you can't win, Bond activates a conveyor belt and jumps on it, firing at the cages holding tanks on the walls. Bond is carried outside, while the worst storage system ever dumps tanks on dudes at a rate that makes me wonder how they just get 1 or 2 of these out normally without this happening. Who designed this storage setup?
I know, and it just leads out to the runway conveniently where planes are.
Bond rolls outside and sees the turbo porter rolling down the runway. The soldiers give chase, and he takes cover and expends his ammo on them before sprinting for the plane. Ourumov says, hold your fire, for no reason whatsoever. I'm serious, like, think about this. Like, what does it matter? And don't say, like, he gives a shit about the plane because he just lets it roll off a cliff in a minute.
And why? I mean, if the base is on alert, why is there a plane leaving?
It should be on lockdown.
Should be on lockdown.
Bond catches the plane, though, boards it, and tosses out the pilot, who gets punted when a motorcycle crashes into him. Bond jacks the Kagaiva 350-24 and chases the plane down the runway, which has been established through model work and compositing to be a top of and ending in mountainous drop-offs. The pilotless plane rolls off the runway and dives down. Bond rides after and dives into a freefall with no chute chasing it. Now, there's a few shots of an aerial stuntman chasing the plane, but as I said, the compositing technology has gotten a lot further along, and they opted to do compositing far more often than not in this film. Brosnan did much of his own stunts, but, like I said, most of it's compositing.
It still looked really good.
After this amazing scene has us on the edge of our seats, he finally catches the plane, pulls himself in, and starts pulling up as hard as he can. There's a shot from a mountaintop that has the plane disappear dropping, and then pull up and reappear soaring just over them and the top of the mountain just in time. It's amazing piloting, and it's a great shot.
Why would you fly back where small arms fire could obviously destroy this plane? You're in a Cessna, basically.
Got plot armor. Bond's superpower is luck. No one's going to hit that plane with any small arms. Get out of here.
Fair. Maybe.
As Bond flies, he gains control, and the facility explodes from his charges. At 6 minutes and 53 seconds into the movie, he set those charges to 3 minutes. And at 10 minutes and 26 seconds, it blows up, and that's almost 4 minutes. So Alec really screws Bond over later with that strict 3-minute thing.
Yes, he does.
Bond flies victorious over the exploding base as the explosion becomes the golden eye of the Bond barrel spiral as we fade into the credits.
As I said, this was probably one of the best pre-title sequences for a Bond movie made. Well written, well acted, decent stunts, a lot of action.
That lightning in a bottle.
Yep.
The opening swipes across the strings are purposeful and hard. Tina Turner's classic Goldeneye starts up, and this song is amazing. The arrangement is stunning, and she belts the vocals.
Jesus, magnificent. To me, it seemed like a U2 song performed by Tina Turner, and I was impressed. The title sequence looked really good. It was a lot of smoke and silhouettes, but they were well done this time.
Looked really good.
It did. It looked really, really good.
Albert R. Broccoli is credited as presenter. More honorary than anything, I'm not going to lie. Brosnan finally got the gig. The titles are fire-themed for the golden aesthetic. Jesus Christ, these girls are nude and lit to where you can see everything in certain edges of light. Basically, everyone's getting the treatment.
Basically, everybody got the treatment. Everybody was naked.
It's very seductive, smooth, and dangerous. Girls exhaling smoke or producing guns from their duplicitous mouths. It does show a literal golden eyeball the first time she says the words in the song. Cubby's last great contribution.
Right.
There's also a lot of imagery alluding to the fall of the Soviet Union, which had happened between films, and was kind of a big deal, I guess, at the time.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Stars, sickles, hammers, and even statues of Lenin, all literally falling. Also Cubby's idea. They enforced that 90s industrial aesthetic as well in this, with girls hammering at statues of Stalin and other Soviet iconography. Samantha Bond, holding the Bond name down in the titles. Associate producer Anthony Way, who, along with Douglas Noakes, got some hella treatment. Assistant director Jerry Gavigan. Camera operator Roger Pierce, who got the job over his brothers Sean Timothy and George Daniel. Electrical supervisor of wizarding Terry Potter. Car chase stunts Old Boy Remy Julian. Supervising art director Neil Lamont. Set decor Michael Ford. Model unit art director Michael Lamont. Main titles by Daniel Kleinman and wow.
My dude.
It's amazing what a fresh mind that hasn't been making the same titles since the 60s can do.
Oh my gosh. So different.
I mean, this is everything Maurice established. It's just executed better than Maurice ever did if we're going to be honest with ourselves.
Oh, please, let's be honest.
Stunt coordinator Simon Crane. Special effects supervisor Chris Corbold. Miniature effects supervisor Derek Meddings, who would pass while making this film, RIP.
Oh.
Second unit director Ian Sharp, but additional unit direction and photography by The Woo. He's getting old and seems to only add additional unit to the franchise from now on, and only a couple more times.
Well, they all gotta go sometime, I suppose.
Editor Terry Rawlings giving himself some jiggling treatment. Director of photography Phil Mayhew. Production designer Peter Lamont. Music by Eric Serra. He made some stylistic choices of the era. I'm sure you'll remember it being more awesome than it is.
That is fair.
It's like 75% of the songs on the score are like masterpieces. They'll die legendary songs. And then 25% of them are like, what the fuck is this?
That's a fair assessment.
Goldeneye, performed by Tina Turner, written by Bono and The Edge. No, not that Edge. Executive producer Tom Pevsner, who said, he's really the nuts and bolts man, and he makes all the little things happen that keep everything together.
Huh, nice.
Screenplay by Jeffrey Kane and Bruce Firestein, from the story by Michael France. Produced by Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli. Welcome to Modern Bond.
Da-dun, da-dun.
They key the frame on a girl demoing a concrete sickle over a golden eyeball, before just blink cutting to the color-corrected Goldeneye. Directed by Martin Campbell, the legend who saved Bond twice.
I give him that.
We zoom into a very long CGI barrel of a Walther, and on the other side, the dot reveals the movie proper, as we get the bumper cam of the famous DB5.
I don't know how many times I have to say this, but I love that car.
Every Bond needs to be seen in this car, period.
Period.
As the car rips through the hills above Monte Carlo, actually shot around Theron, we get a subtitle informing us it's been 9 years, and we are now in 1995.
Well, these guys have barely aged.
It's that Earl Grey, bro. Ask Picard.
It's that Earl Grey.
Bond cruises while the girl in his car has a minor panic attack that only escalates the whole time. James, is it really necessary to drive quite so fast? More often than you'd think. Pretty damn good one-liner, and Brosnan's pretty damn smooth at delivering them.
Yeah, he is. He is the near-perfect James Bond. Near-perfect.
I thought it was funny that we said this about Dalton, that if he had more movies, he would be the best Bond. And then I watched Goldeneye, and I'm like, if he had better movies, he would by far be the best Bond.
By far.
Because this guy is the Bond everyone wants him to be. He's cool, he's charming, he's suave, he's believable in his action fights, at least in his younger movies. And in a good movie like Goldeneye, you're like, this works. He could take cheesy one-liners, and they sound badass. They don't sound stupid. Well, that also helps that the writing was better in this, because, I mean, as we'll see in Die Another Day, maybe it's not really all his skill.
Maybe not.
And maybe the writing was just very well done in this movie. I like a spirited ride as much as the next girl, but she stops as a red 1995 Ferrari F355 GTS pulls up alongside them, and Bond smiles at the female driver. Who's that? Bond's passenger asks, and Bond smiles. The next girl.
Very good one.
The woman speeds off in her Ferrari, which to Bond means race on. The Ferrari cuts corners. They're driving pretty quickly. I mean, they do overcrank some shots. And the ones they don't, I mean, it's not like they're racing at 150 miles an hour down the mountain ways, but they're very obviously going faster than 20.
Very obviously.
Bond's passenger freaks out constantly. The music is so goddamn strange in this scene.
It is weird, right?
It's this odd, cheap 90s music you'd expect from the first season of Power Rangers or something.
Or your first Casio keyboard or something.
As cool as it was in 1995, it is out of place now.
Yes it is.
The Ferrari guards the lead, but Bond overtakes her. And hey, is that Jean Grey? There's an insert again of some overclocked footage, and then there's just a really great stunt where the Ferrari almost hits a tractor and spins off-road a few times before regaining control on the road.
Nice camera work, too.
It's beautifully shot and reminiscent of something in Mission Impossible 2, the John Woo one, where they duel with motorcycles. Bond's passenger screams for him to stop and says he's just trying to show off the size of his, and Bond interjects, engine, and she corrects, ego. Here we all have a pleasant drive in the country, and you have to bring psychology into it. Yes, well, I was just sent here to evaluate you. Let's try and put that behind us, shall we? Glossing over the constant innuendo of this film, Serena Gordon plays Caroline, a shrink sent to give Bond an eval, and he's joyriding, see scaring and gaslighting her, before, sure, we'll call it seducing her. Jesus, Bond, there's a reason they do these checks. You are the reason we do these checks, Bond.
Yeah.
The race continues down the mountain, and ahead we see the Tour de France, or some shit. The Austin and the Ferrari collided at high speed shooting the sequence and had to be restored overnight.
Oh, really?
They're neck and neck as they come to the cyclist parade, and Bond lets the Ferrari go ahead, which she barely does in time to not kill anyone. The vehicles speed by, and somehow this front cyclist shins himself with his pedal, and somehow again this causes him to fall backwards, creating a supposedly comedic domino effect. I've shinned myself plenty of times with my Peugeot. I've never fallen over because of it. Does hurt, though.
That seemed a little pointless. How tightly were they packed to fall like dominoes?
You know, hoping to catch that draft when they started up again after dead momentum on a hella incline.
Right?
The music feels like the theme in Ninja Turtles 2 when they're in the sewer. The 90s one. It really is the only thing wrong with this scene. Caroline screams for him to stop this car at once, and he pulls the emergency brake and leans right in her face to say, As you can see, I have no problem with female authority. Woke. He's woke. Oh my god, Bond is gay. Connery's the best.
This Bond is as bad as all the other Bonds. He's just a little more sophisticated about it.
It sounds woke to me. That's why Connery's the best. I'm going to go on Instagram and Facebook and Reddit and post about it. I'm going to put laughing emojis on anything that has to do with Bond that isn't Connery. He pops his armrest and reveals a chilled bottle of Dom and glasses. She calls him incorrigible, and he says, "Let's toast to your evaluation, shall we?" and starts making out with her. As we pan up over Monte Carlo, he says, "Your very thorough evaluation," and she giggles.
Why does he have a refrigerator in his car?
Wait, you don't? Pleb?
No, I don't. No. Yeah, I guess I'm a pleb.
You really need to talk to Q after this.
We'll see.
Hard cut to later that night, and Bond drives to the Casino de Monte Carlo, and on his way in, notices the Ferrari and its plates. There's a low shot that follows him through the casino that's very well done. The cinematography is on point. It cannot be overstated how miles ahead this movie is from the last in terms of actual film production. If we're honest, the Bond franchise started cheap, using cars that people had around. They did jump cuts for glass breaking in Dr. No. And along the way, from there to here, they've mostly relied on acting and story, the spectacle, the location, and the stunts. The movies were never the best put together from a production standpoint, though each has proven better than the last. When you use the same crew for 30 years, they'll do the same stuff while slowly getting better. Cubby liked working with the same people that worked on the first if he could. He could have hired the best Hollywood had to offer, but didn't. He kept the same people out of loyalty and love. But he's gone now, and his kids did want the best of new blood. And pretty much everyone's dead. And thank God. It's amazing it took 17 films to learn to color grade, and no, I'm not counting just using a blue filter for fake underwater scenes.
I think the hiatus was really good for the Bond franchise. They came back with a bang on this movie, and you're right, everything is better. From production value to color grading to film stock. I mean, the thing looks magnificent, still, to this day.
There's not grain everywhere. They spent money on film that Cubby never would. It's amazing.
Hiring the biggest and brightest minds, that was definitely a plus. Because this movie is hands down far and above all the other Bond movies that came before it. Your first big budget Bond movie.
This movie is an upgrade in almost every way from almost everything before it. And now, instead of relying solely on the tropes and gimmicks that define Bond, they're making great films that could stand alone without that. Which is the only reason why the franchise is still alive, because people were sick of the old school way of making and presenting Bond adventures, and the box office ultimately proved it.
Right.
Bond sits to play Baccarat against the girl in the Ferrari, and it's another homage to the Bond intro in Dr. No. But this time, the dress is black, because she's evil.
I didn't really notice, because she's hot, so I wasn't looking at her dress so much.
I was looking at her cigar and hoping Freud was wrong. Sometimes a cigar ain't a cigar, baby. Come here. I know you got daddy. I'm sorry. In fact, this movie isn't a redo or ripoff of any other Bond movie. It's made of pieces of almost all of them. The main plot itself is somewhat a cross of Diamonds Are Forever, Thunderball, and Goldfinger. There's imagery lifted from You Only Live Twice and The Spy Who Loved Me, and more.
Even though it is kind of a composite of all the other Bond movies, it just felt very standalone to me.
It's built on the shoulders of what came before, but it's its own thing.
Yeah.
Bond sits and watches the girl light a cigar and says, "It appears we share the same passions. 3 anyway. 'Cause this Bond likes cigars, not cigarettes." They have a back and forth, and it's almost non-stop innuendo. If you haven't gotten it by now, 80% of Brosnan's dialogue and 60% of the total dialogue in the movie is innuendo and one-liners. It's double-edged, though. They aren't bad, even for so many. They're mostly great, snappy, and cool. And Brosnan, as I said, has a knack for delivering them better than we've ever seen. He's naturally cool as fuck. But even by this scene, it starts to feel inhuman and eye-rolling.
The banter was good. It was a little quippy, but it's not my favorite.
Bond beats her eventually, and she walks away. He walks after her and tries to schmooze her, but she doesn't seem impressed. He introduces himself, and she says she's Zinnia Onatop, played by Femke Janssen. He points out her counterfeit license plates and she gets angry, asking his rank with the MVD, to which he says Commander. As Santa's little brother interjects asking Zinnia if this guy is bothering her, Zinnia gloats that this one is an admiral, and Bond loves a woman who enjoys pulling rank. Nice to meet you, Mr. Bond. The pleasure, I'm sure, was all mine. Outside, the local theater troupe puts on their performance art rendition of Raggedy Ann, while Bond climbs up to the top seats and looks over the back to the bay. He pulls out a monocular camera that definitely looks like a spotter scope to me, but it takes photos. In 1995. In high def.
Cutting edge technology.
I guess, man. They were ahead of the digital camera trend on that one.
I just thought it was really weird that Bond would just, race this girl out of nowhere, bump into her, stalk her, take pictures. Like, why?
And happen to stumble into the next great world crisis over it. Bond's superpower is luck. He watches them board a Riva Aqua Rama special to transport to a yacht called the Manticore, which was the real-life Northern Cross. He then goes back to his car and looks over at Lafayette, a modern stealth frigate. Although she was completed in 1992, she had entered active service with the French Navy in 1996, making her nearly brand new and unused during the time of this filming. That ship is still in active service today.
Dope.
He also notices the helicopter on the helipad. The Eurocopter battlefield prototype was only one of 4 copters of its kind at the time, and the only one that had passed testing. The French had ordered some of these with a delivery date of 2005, 11 years after filming this. That's how new this helicopter was. Cutting edge.
I'm pretty sure that was the prototype they used for Blue Thunder.
As soon as Bond gets in his car, he hits print on his CD player, and it feeds the images he took with info beneath each one, and his stereo plays a message from Moneypenny. So that scope had Wi-Fi too, and so does this car. And holy shit, they got that info fast. How'd they gather that? Brief Moneypenny and have her record this by the time he walked back to his fucking car. What the fuck?
What the fuck?
Moneypenny says Onatop is an ex-Soviet fighter pilot with current links to the Yanis crime syndicate in St. Petersburg. The Manticore is leased to a Yanis puppet company. M says observed Zinnia, but no contact without prior approval. Good night, James. I trust you'll stay on top of things.
That was silly.
And we cut to Zinnia getting it on with the sad sack. This is Admiral Chuck Farrell, played by Billy J. Mitchell, who was Captain Peterson in Never Say Never Again.
Captain Peterson, huh?
I don't even remember either. He was on the sub.
Oh, he was on the sub. I do remember. He was the creepy bald-headed dude.
Zinnia is wild. She screams and throws herself around. She bites and scratches for blood. But this is foreplay. Zinnia only gets off from murdering people. And she does. She does. Climactic orgasm from murder. That's her thing. And it's fucking weird, but I love it.
They had to amp up the psychopathy after Benicio del Toro, you see.
While rolling with Chuck, she wraps her legs around him, and as Regis Philbin once said, she kills him with her legs.
Did he say that?
Yes, he did.
All right.
Peeking as Ourumov steals the Admiral's ID card and pauses to model it for the fucking cameraman. I wish I was making this up.
No, you're not. It was a good flash of the ID card. They wanted to make sure the intent was clear.
He stopped and he held it there. Let me angle this for the camera. Let me hold it here for a few seconds. Okay, got the shot. Moving on.
Yep.
The next morning, Zinnia and Ourumov leave on the Riva, and Bond sneaks aboard the Manticore. The music is much better here and definitely has that more familiar Goldeneye feeling. He watches the Riva head toward the stealth frigate and is attacked by a goon armed with an oar. Bond snaps him with a towel and wraps the towel around his neck before flipping him down the staircase. It wasn't 2000's level of bad, but there was a lot of cuts and some use of camera shaking in this fight scene.
Yeah, there was a little bit of that, but it wasn't 2000 levels of bad.
We then cut to a motorcade of Mercedes arriving to the frigate as a band plays, and Zinnia sneaks in with the stolen ID and someone who, at least from behind, looks a lot like her old squeeze.
But they never show his face, so you never get the mask effect or anything like that.
Cutting back to Bond, who finds nothing in the main cabin, except the happiest corpse on Earth.
Yeah.
Bond jumps onto the yacht's other boat, a Riva Monte Carlo 30 offshore and punches it toward the frigate. Meanwhile, the French warship captain, played by Pavel Douglas, is expo dumping on the chopper. See, the 90s was a crazy time with a lot of new tech and shit that just sounded dope, but we had no idea what it was, or at least Hollywood didn't. See any movie about the internet or virtual reality from the 90s.
The net.
Lawnmower Man.
Hmm.
This Tiger helicopter is not only stealth, but is protected from EMP, radio jamming, and electromagnetic radiation. Down below, the chopper pilots are making their way up for the demonstration when Xenia whistles at them and says, "I have a small surprise from your friends back at the barracks." And they said, "I think I've died and gone to heaven." "Not yet," she says, and shoots them. So what was that 3-second honeypot for? I mean, you were just immediately going to shoot them anyway, so why the subterfuge, for real?
Right? You wanted to look them in the face before you killed them?
Right? You fucking Actually, yeah, she did. Never mind. Moving on.
Mm-hmm.
The Tiger chopper pilots are Captain Bernard Jobert, played by Wayne Michaels, and Lieutenant Francois Brous, played by Simon Crane.
A cameo from our stunt coordinator.
After Xenia kills them, she and Uramov don their uniforms and steal the prototype. Bond tries to stop them, but is detained. Fade to black. Hard cut to Huskies approaching a base in Siberia.
It was kind of silly. Bond was never going to catch the helicopter. Why didn't he just say there were imposters on board? Did he not speak the language? There was a whole lot of reasons of things he could have
Speaks
done.
the language. He spoke French to the doorman at the...
Right. So, I don't get it.
I think it was just more like at that point he looked like the person to detain and they wouldn't have listened to him anyways.
Well,
I think he knew he lost and he was just angry.
that's probably more like it. But but what did he lose? I mean, he didn't realize what they were doing until the very last minute because he just happened to luck onto a case.
Yeah, but he knew it wasn't good. They stole a helicopter. Gotta be bad.
That's got to be bad. Obviously.
This is the Space Weapons Control Center in Severnaya, to be specific. Some amazing force perspective model work in this shot as well. Inside, we see a busy space center full of techs and programmers. We focus on one, Natalia Semyonova, played by Isabella Skorupko. As she tries to program commands, she's hit with a 90s Hollywood idea of a firewall, a very perverted one that she shows to her work wife, Anna, played by Michelle Arthur. And then they emasculate the immature hacker. "Boris!" Natalia screams. Boris Grushenko, immortalized by Alan Cummings, laughs and says, "I made it easy this time. Even you should be able to guess it, borscht for brains. All right, I'll give you a hint. They're right in front of you and can open very large doors." And she types in knockers and gains access while her avatar's chest inflates, and she calls Boris a geek.
He is a geek. But did you know Alan Cummings has been in so many Femke Jensen productions that I thought they were going together?
Isn't he gay?
Bisexual.
Oh, fair enough. Just then, his terminal beeps. Boris chimes that he's in. He's hacked the U.S. Department of Justice, but just after bragging that the slughead Americans would never detect him, he's detected. So Boris spikes them, locking their end. She watches him do this and asks his password for his spike program, and he only gives her a hint that you sit on it, but you can't take it with you, and types 5 characters. So it's chair. Dude, these passwords are the worst ever, hacker boy.
Right? Well, it was the 90s. People who didn't even think they needed passwords back then.
By God, I am invincible! Boris cheers to no one. "Was it good for you too?" he asks her, and she rolls her eyes and says that she's going to go get some coffee, while he needs a cigarette. You get it?
Why didn't he just teleport outside? Because, he played Nightcrawler.
When Boris goes out to smoke, the Tiger lands next to him, and somehow Xenia and Uramov change their outfits in that thing while flying over. Also, what's the range on that thing? Oh, and one more thing, they never revealed that it was Uramov with her until now. Just throwing that out there.
Right, how did they make Ormov look like, what's-his-face?
Billy J. Mitchell.
Because there was only 2 of them, and one of them was a co-pilot.
They do not look alike.
They do not look anything alike. Secondly, how much fuel, I agree with you, does that little-ass helicopter have on board? And that ain't no short flight.
At first, when I was writing this, I was like, they couldn't have stopped for fuel. There's probably a manhunt out for them right now. But then later on, the evil queen of numbers didn't care about Bond's hunch on the helicopter, and he rubs it in her face. So they could have stopped for fuel because no one was giving a shit about it priority-wise.
I'm sure whoever they stole it from was giving a shit, but okay.
Yeah, but fuck the French. Back inside, Natalia is pouring a cup of joe when the two baddies enter and Ourumov reveals he's a general now when entering the facility. The duty officer, played by Simon Coons, is told that this is a random inspection of the Goldeneye satellite. He tells Ourumov both satellites of the program, Misha and Petya, are orbiting and functioning. Ourumov gives him access codes to test fire Goldeneye and tells him that he's being timed on arming the weapon, to which the duty officer hurriedly obliges.
See, that was a very clever ploy because if you're an inspector and you tell them they're being timed, then they stop thinking. All they do is acting because they're just following routine. It's a good way to get a soldier off his game.
The duty officer scans a keycard, then his palm to be given another keycard, which he also scans in the same spot to open the safe to the Goldeneye plate and launch key.
Seemed like a little bit of a convolution for a lock, but okay.
Redundancy is key, I guess.
I guess.
When he returns with them, Ourumov looks at his watch and says, "Thank you, Major," as Xenia racks her weapon and mows the soldiers down first, then mass murders all the programmers, moaning louder and louder, quivering as she peeks. Ourumov's face is amazing. He's just looking at her like, what the fuck is wrong with you, bitch?
He is totally disgusted by the prospect of having to work with this woman at this point.
He's just like, I never knew how fucked up you were until this moment right here.
Exactly. It's like, I don't think I told you to kill everybody, did I?
And I definitely told you not to have screaming orgasms over it. What the fuck is wrong with you? Natalia drops her mug in the break room when this happens. The evil duo insert the plate and turn the keys in unison. They arm the satellite to fire on the same Severnaya base they're currently at and arm the weapon. The Soviet-era satellite unfolds, and they hear a noise in the break room. On her way to check the break room, Xenia sees a dying tech hit an alarm and shoots him. In the break room, Natalia has made it appear as if she was in the vent, and Xenia lights it up.
I often do that when I play hide and seek. The old misdirect.
Ourumov grabs the plates and keys, and Xenia joins him on the way out, saying she had to ventilate someone. And they take off and get out of Dodge as Miggs scramble to check out the alarm.
The second silliest one-liner? I had to ventilate someone.
We then cut to an establishing shot of Vauxhall Cross, the new and actual home of MI6. So for the first time, Bond is at the real-life headquarters of MI6. Inside, he finds more new, like a new Moneypenny played by Samantha Bond. She's dressed to the nines, and Bond asks why she's dressed to kill. You'll find this crushing 007, but I don't get dolled up every night hoping for an international incident so I could run down here to impress James Bond. Bullshit.
I believed her 100%. I think this version of Moneypenny is a great version of Moneypenny.
She was on a date, if you must know, with a gentleman at the theater. Oh, Moneypenny, I'm devastated. What would I do without you? As far as I'm aware, James, you've never had me. Hope springs eternal. You know this sort of behavior could qualify as sexual harassment. Really? What's the penalty for that? Someday you'll have to make good on your innuendos. This Moneypenny is thirsty, yet sexually confident, and knows how to grab him by the balls. The sexual tension is really good here.
I thoroughly enjoyed this interaction. I felt this Moneypenny was not only an equal, but kind of superior to James Bond. Been putting him in place for a little while, is what it seemed like to me.
Inside the main office, Bond meets with Bill Tanner, this time played by Michael Kitchen. Tanner briefs Bond on the alarm at Severnaya and the satellite photos of the Tiger on location. Tanner says Bond's hunch was right. Too bad the evil queen of numbers wouldn't let him play it. To which Bond quietly clears his throat, and Tanner winces that, God, they're right behind me, aren't they? Wince. M, now played by the incomparable Dame Judi Dench, roasts Tanner before telling him to proceed. Bond asks what the base is for, and Tanner says he doesn't know. At one point, they believed it was for a weapon called Goldeneye, but M interrupts, saying they didn't have the finance or tech to implement that. Bond says skeptically, numbers were never his strong suit. Cutting back to Severnaya, we see Natalia coming out from a cupboard and finding her coworkers and Anna dead. She walks over bodies of everyone she knew and is emotionally devastated. This is traumatizing shit. And if that wasn't enough, a klaxon blares and she looks up to see the Goldeneye is about to fucking fire on her. The satellite flares up and blasts an EMP over the area in the form of a visible shockwave with blue electricity. This also causes every single thing to blow the fuck up. Computer screens, glass, lights, the coffee maker.
Oh, okay. So, not exactly how an EMP works.
That's nowhere near how it works.
Theoretically, it could, but to generate that kind of power, oh my god.
From space, and it creates a shockwave on the Earth's surface.
There was a large enough solar flare to create sparks down here.
Oh, I'll bet. The sun's a very powerful motherfucker.
That's what I'm saying. That little satellite couldn't have done that.
No.
The sun made sparks.
Yeah, get out of here.
Get out of here.
Back in London, the feed cuts, and Tanner says, "What the bloody hell was that?" Cutting to the MiGs exploding for no fucking reason. And the Tiger getting away protected by its tech. The third MiG actually behaves correctly and doesn't randomly explode. It loses power and collides with the Severnaya disk structure. Then explodes.
Everything blows up in this movie, by the way.
Hell yeah.
Just saying.
The MiGs, by the way, save for one shot of them on the ground, are all models. There's so much model work in the film, and Derek Meddings was a G. But the MiG is so big compared to the interior shots of this facility that the fighter plane is as big as the building outside. What the fuck?
Yeah, I was like, what? This little hut is on the top of here because look how big that MiG is. It's big as all of the buildings.
Amazing explosion, though.
Oh, no. Well, that was nice. Nice model work.
Except for the scale on the MiG. That was off. A rare flaw from a dying man. Natalia survives the disaster, barely. Even almost being crushed. She covers Anna with a blanket and tries to go to the busted doors. She shakes them and screams her name, crying, unable to exit, when the roof collapses and part of the dish caves in. She uses this to climb out. And you're gonna die of exposure, lady.
Easily. You didn't grab a jacket. You used all the jackets to cover everybody up. You know it's fucking winter outside.
I mean, yeah, you found a dog sled, but I hope there's something real fucking close in this Siberian tundra. And seeing as this is a top secret base in inhospitable lands, I fucking doubt it.
Luckily, she knows how to use a dog sled. I know how to use a dog sled. That knowledge did not come easy.
I would just jump on and say, mush.
Yeah, and you would be dead and lost.
Back in London, when a different satellite comes into range, and they can now see the area totally destroyed, when Bond points out that there's no lights for 30 miles. EMP? Tanner goes on an expo dump of EMP to the audience, and M interrupts again to put the M back in info brag.
Okay, definitely all M in this one. Remember when you were making a joke about this is the woke Bond and yada yada yada? You're not quite wrong.
I know I'm not.
Every woman in this Bond film is a strong, dominant woman. And it clearly shows with all the writing.
And one of them is very purposefully and obviously positioned to be more powerful and dominating than Bond.
Oh, yes, obviously. M is super intimidating in this.
Oh, Daniel Craig is woke. It's like, actually, this movie was pretty woke.
Yeah.
But, you know, Sean Connery's the best.
But Sean Connery's the best. Whatever.
So, Goldeneye exists. Yes, Bond retorts in a told-you-so manner. She stupidly asks if this could be an accident, and Bond says no. The helicopter was the perfect vehicle to steal the Goldeneye, and the blast was to cover up the crime. M asks if it was Yanis, and Bond thinks they may have just been hired players, because it takes someone with power and access to get the keys to the bomb. He zooms in on the feed and sees Natalia wandering through the snow and says, at least one person might know who the insider is. Cutting to M's office, she gets off the line with the PM and tells Bond the Russians are covering it up. She asks him what they know about Yanis. Top flight arms dealers. Outfitted the Iraqis in the Gulf War, so they must not have given them much. The headman is a mystery. Onatop is the only confirmed contact.
I like how together Bond is on this. He's been studying Janice for a while, I guess.
I mean, they've been around for 9 years.
This whole plot is kind of convoluted.
This is convoluted to you? He doesn't know shit about them except they're arms dealers. And
Right?
like the only thing they can even pin down that they've done was they outfitted the Iraqis in the Gulf War, which, as I pointed out, they were so illfully unequipped for it, they literally got rolled over.
Yeah. It sounds like I'm
So obviously they didn't give him that much arms either.
right.
And no one knows anything about the main man, and they only know Xenia because they just figured her out.
Hmm.
And it's been obviously 9 years of him building this empire, and there's no way they wouldn't have kept at least notes on him to know that much. This is probably the most believable info brag.
Oh yeah, definitely. This is one of the most believable James Bond movies.
M offers a drink, and Bond says that the last M kept cognac in the top drawer, but she interrupts yet again to swing her dick around and say that she prefers bourbon, and then pulls out a bottle of Jack fucking Daniels. Real classy. This made my wife die laughing, by the way.
American bourbon, huh?
It's called trash.
Yeah.
She pulls up a dossier on Oromov, as he was the general over the station. She says he sees himself as the next Iron Man of Russia, and they ruled him out for that reason, as to them, that means that he doesn't fit the profile of a traitor. But anyone who knows the slightest Russian history should know that this actually means that that motherfucker is very likely to do exactly what he just did. If a dude has desire to be the next great strongman of Russia, betrayal and coups and violence are exactly what they'll do.
Every time.
He is prime suspect number one. Bond doesn't buy the assessment of his old adversary and asks if it was made by the same heads that said Goldeneye couldn't exist, or that the Tiger posed no immediate threat and wasn't worth following. All fair points and all, but A, we'd beggar the nation chasing every little thing that came in just in case it led to something bigger. And B, what the fuck made you think that this was even going to be such a huge thing to begin with? You stumbled on this when you raced a girl and thought she acted sus in a casino. It landed on your lap by chance. Well, by writing. The odds that this would be the next huge world crisis in real life would be non-existent, but it's Bond.
Right? You just happened to stumble across this. And you were right? No, you were lucky.
Bond's superpower is luck. It explains all the other ones.
Right?
You don't like me, Bond. You don't like my methods. You think I'm an accountant, a bean counter, more interested in my numbers than your instincts. The thought had occurred to me. Good, because I think you're a sexist, misogynist dinosaur, a relic of the Cold War whose boyish charms wasted on me were used to abuse that poor woman I sent to evaluate you. Point taken. Not quite. If you think I don't have the balls to send a man out to die, your instincts are dead wrong. But I won't do it on a whim. Now, this is amazing. And I get that the old lady calling Bond a dinosaur thing, but Judi Dench was 28 when Bond started gallivanting around with women. And this was more of a meta response to critics by parroting back their own remarks for two reasons. One, it shows that they're listening and updating. But two, when Bond ultimately wins over this mentality, it means that they win over critics, at least in their minds.
I guess that's a fair assessment. I just appreciated the modern dressing down.
Did this because in real life, the leader of MO6 was a female at the time, and then they had to make her stronger than Bond because otherwise she never would have been accepted, even in the 90s.
Right. No.
Back when America was great again and we had woke Bonds that we just thought were awesome.
Yeah.
Instead of burning the world down over it, but whatever. My wife also noticed how shaky and almost unsure Judi Dench was in this sequence. In an on-set interview, she expressed how big this job was and how nervous she was on her first days of filming. And it really works, as the character is also really new on the job and getting her feet under her also. Now, don't get me wrong. She still seems more of a badass than any of the men before her. But she definitely does have kind of some work to do.
Well, yeah, she definitely has. She's new.
And it works because so is her character.
Right. She totally establishes herself as the boss.
She wants him to find Goldeneye and who took it, but she doesn't want this to become some kind of vendetta with Oromov over Trevelyan's death. You didn't get him killed. Neither did you. Don't make it personal. And Bond swigs his whiskey and says, never. When Bond goes to leave, she calls to him and smiles. Come back alive. And he smiles and leaves.
You know, even after the dressing down, she gave him that nice little motherly pat on the ass on the way out because, like, come back alive. And that was like the first establishment of a relationship that this M would have with James Bond throughout the rest of her tenure.
That spark right there is a huge bit of the foundation of their relationship on how it ends up in the end. It really was a great moment because they'd been so adversarial up to this point. She's new, they're completely different, and they haven't been playing well. And there was just this moment after they'd both made their points and seen each other and still walked away a little miffed, but respect.
Yep.
We cut to an establishing shot of Palace Square in St. Petersburg before focusing on the Minister of Defense, Dmitry Mishkin, played by Cheikh Karyo. He has his cabinet assembled, waiting for someone when Urumov walks in. Mishkin tells him to report, and Mike Wilson is staring at him in the furthest left seat.
Mike always in the movie, huh?
Urumov says Goldeneye went off, and it was committed by Siberian separatists. Urumov tenders his resignation as punishment, but the council robbles, and Mishkin says, no need for that, my dude. Just promise that that was the only Goldeneye satellite, and we'll all move on. And Urumov immediately says, oh yeah, totes, that was the only one, and it was destroyed in the attack, so... Woo!
Liar, liar, pants are fire. And I didn't get a harumph out of that guy.
Mishkin says, what of the two missing techs? And Urumov's face drops, saying he only knew of the one, Boris Grushenko. Mishkin informs him of Natalia, and the general is shook. The minister is suspicious of the general, but they put that aside for now.
He should have been more suspicious, like...
He should have been way more suspicious.
How did he know about one survivor if he didn't know about the other?
Well, he's head of the investigation.
So?
Cut to Bond in the Q lab when Q rolls up in a wheelchair. Bond asks how he got it. Skiing? And a missile flies out of Q's leg cast before Q answers, hunting.
Clever. At the old Q lab. Always something going on in the background. Always watch the background of the Q lab, everybody. That's where the action is.
Q shows off Bond's new car, a 1995 BMW Z3, metallic blue, radar, self-destruct, and all the usual refinements. Q's particularly proud of the Stinger missiles behind the headlights. Now, the last movie, that was top American government shit, and it was as long as a man. But now they're oversized darts shoved behind Bond's headlights.
Well, Q is a miniaturization specialist. That's his job.
The two trade quips and one-liners almost exclusively for communication, as per usual for this movie. Q gives Bond a Luke Skywalker belt that helps him swing across Death Star crevasses.
I just like how they have a brand new sponsor, so of course they have a brand new car.
I'm just mad we abandoned a perfectly good DB5 for this piece of shit.
Yeah.
Q stresses that the belt is tested for one. Q shows off a silver platter document X-ray scanner that never comes up again, and then shows Bond a pen that houses a grenade, activated after 3 clicks of the apparatus. 3 further clicks disarms the explosives.
I like this Q scene. Like, the gadgets were kind of silly, but it was a really good, well-played scene between Pierce Brosnan and Desmond Llewellyn.
Gadgets were silly. Like, not the dude climbing the snake charming rope that bends over. And
Right.
the gadgets are always silly, like a laser melting a sombrero dude's face. And this is like an X-ray document. Yeah, I mean, what about the cast that smashes the skull, or the door that smashes the skull, and he's got like yes, there's a missile in his bloody cast. You didn't burn yourself there?
No.
But I mean, like, the rest of it's fine.
Oh, yeah.
Q demonstrates the pen on Fred. When Fred blows up, Q says, don't say it. And Bond says anyways, the writing's on the wall. And don't bring up that song, man. That's a sore spot for me. Q tried to give his obligatory speech about the return conditions of these gadgets, and a man is launched in the background while Bond picks up a sub sandwich, and Q freaks out. Don't touch that. It's my lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Full setup now complete. We're already almost halfway through the film.
They spend a nice long time establishing what's going on. It plays well.
Cut to a British Airways Boeing 757 landing in St. Petersburg. Bond is in Russia and flew commercial to get there. This is kinda nuts and definitely a first. But St. Petersburg Airport here is actually the Queen's Stand at Epsom Downs Racecourse in Surrey. Bond makes his contact, leaning against the Mercedes and reading the paper. He leans next to the man and says, in London, April's a spring month. And the grumpy man says, "Oh yeah, what are you, the weatherman? For crying out loud, another stiff-ass Brit with your secret codes and passwords. One of these days you guys are going to learn to just drop it. Come on, my car's over there, actually." And goes to a pathetic 1963 ZAZ 965 sedan. And wait a second, that's Brad Whitaker.
Brad Whitaker, the arms dealer?
Bond smashes the car door against him and draws on him. "Like you said, drop it." All right. April's a spring month, whereas in St. Petersburg, we're freezing our butts off. Is that good enough for government work for you? No. Show me the rose. And the man protests, but Bond is adamant, so the contact drops his pants and shows off a flower tattoo that I will not call a rose.
Right. I mean, if he asked his tattoo artist for a rose, I would have immediately asked for my money back.
I would have been pretty mad about that. I would not go back for any more tattoos from that guy.
For sure, no more tattoos from that guy.
It also has the name of his third wife, Muffy.
Is that...
Jack Wade, CIA. James Bond, stiff-ass Brit. Bond compliments Brad Whitaker's separated at birth brother's car and just pretends he doesn't know shit and definitely isn't going to tell him that he had a twin and that he killed him.
And that he was a psychopath who liked to play with army dolls.
They then time jump to Wade working on the engine in the parking lot. "Can you hand me that wrench, Jimmy?" Ouch, that hurt so many people in our YouTube comments just now, dude. Oh my god, Casino Royale 54, they call Bond Jimmy. Rage.
I like the fact that Joe Don Baker calls him Jimmy the whole movie. Never calls him James.
Bond asks Wade what he knows about Yanis, and Wade says that he's connected with the military and KGB. "Hand me the hammer, Jimbo." Oh my god, if them calling Bond Jimmy is bad, then them calling Bond Jimbo just caused people to die of a stroke.
It plays well. Joe Don Baker's a good actor.
Wade says the best he can do is to take Bond to Yanis' competition, Valentin Sukovsky, an ex-KGB mobster with a limp. And Bond says he knows him and gave him the limp, while Wade takes a sledgehammer and smacks his engine, starting it.
Just typical American. They're like, "We're going to fix this engine with a sledgehammer."
Meanwhile, Natalia runs into an IBM and places an order for 35 computers with 500 megahertz drives, CD-ROM, and 14.4 modems. Lols. It'll take 3 days to download a photo with those. But this is the 90s.
The 90s. That's high speed right there.
And dude gets that Monty Banker face smile and offers a demonstration, which she wants, and privately, of course. We cut to Boris on the Yanis train, doing his hacker shit when an alarm goes off because he's got an email. Fuck that. If I had to shut off an alarm, no, fuck that.
Every time an email came in?
The email is from Natalia, telling him to call her. Boris tells her that he thought she was dead, and she makes herself a liability by telling him that she not only knows everything, but will obviously tell anyone. Sadly, she doesn't know that Boris is a goon.
Yeah, the inside man. She totally did not figure that out.
Boris tells her to meet him at the Church of Our Lady in Smolensk in an hour, and we then cut to establishing shots of St. Petersburg, and then again to Wade and Bond at Cubbywood, also in St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
Wade drops Bond off at Sukovsky's, and we cut to Natalia entering the church, the interior of which is St. Sophia's Greek Cathedral in London. It's the creepiest fucking church ever, and she rightly bugs out, but Boris and Xenia grab her on the way out.
I dug that church. I don't care. I mean, it was kind of creepy, but I really dug the aesthetic and the way they shot it. It was one of my favorite locations. It was kind of creepy, but it was cool.
In Zukovsky's club, we meet the man himself, immortalized by Robbie Coltrane. Clean-shaven Hagrid is cursing the free economy when Bond sneaks up and puts a gun to his head. "Walter PPK. Only 3 men I know carry such a weapon, and I've killed 2. Lucky me," Bond quips, as a goon puts a gun to Bond's head, and Zukovsky says, "I think not." We are then treated to the best rendition of Stand By Your Man I've ever heard. Sung by Zukovsky's mistress, Irina, played by Minnie Driver. Even the amp doesn't want to hear her and creates a feedback loop.
It's funny. When I saw that pop up, I was like, Minnie fucking Driver? What the fuck? I hadn't realized that she was in this movie.
Zukovsky ribs Bond. Bond asks who's strangling a cat, and Zukovsky fires a shot between Bond's legs. Bond swallows hard and says, "Very talented girl." Zukovsky chides Bond for working for a woman, and Bond asks for a favor, and this arouses a round of laughter. My knee aches every day. Twice as bad when it's cold. Do you know how long winters last here? Tell him, Dimitri. Well, it depends. Silence!
I just enjoy the fact that Dimitri was about to tell him all about the winters there. Like, he started with he was about to let him know.
It felt like he was going to contradict what he said. Bond bargains the skill was not to hit the knee, but to miss the rest of him. It was professional courtesy not to kill him, to which Zhukovsky will now extend the same courtesy and fires back and forth at Bond's knees as he squirms to dodge. Bond shouts out, Kirov's funeral parlor, 4 o'clock this afternoon. And Zhukovsky grits his teeth. We cut to Zhukovsky's office with Bond expositing 200 pounds of C4 hidden in a casket. Your man drives the hearse in. The money's exchanged. Their man drives out and is arrested with the explosives. And your man makes it out with the money. Your money. Okay, so Bond just offered a semi-sanctioned drug deal. And even though this takes away a buyer and Zhukovsky's cred, he's interested. But really, all I want to know is how the fuck Bond even knew about this deal in the first place. When was he informed to bring it up and offer to sanction it? And on whose authority can he even make offers like this that he's passing out like tokens?
Right? They didn't have cell phones. Nobody saw him stop to make communication. How the fuck did he know any of this?
Where did this come from in the movie?
Right?
He just pulled that out of his ass and Zhukovsky knew what he was talking about. So it had to be like a setup pre-Zhukovsky deal that he's offering to sanction. But how did Bond know about it? It makes no sense. It's obviously something got cut.
Yeah. There's no way he could have known about it.
Bond wants to be set up with Yanis for the accommodation. What has he done to deserve you? Stole a helicopter. Play of 6. 3. None that fly. Who's counting? Man, it's truly hard not to love this snappy dialogue.
Yeah. It is kind of hard not to. It is snappy, witty. It's good.
Bond tells him they took a nuclear weapon and killed a lot of innocent Russians doing it. And Zhukovsky laments, what do you expect from a Cossack? I don't know the man, but I know he's a Leon's Cossack. Bond and Zhukovsky expo dump some real history on us about the Cossacks that had had enough of Stalin's shit and decided to fight against Russia with the Nazis in World War II. After the war, they surrendered to the Allied forces, who promptly shipped them back to Stalin, where most were shot and damn near the rest were worked to death in the gulags. There was a mass suicide of Cossacks when they learned that they were going to be repatriated after the war.
Well, yeah, because they were definitely sure what Stalin was going to do.
Yeah, I mean, he was going to shoot them.
Or worse.
Or just disappear them.
Right?
Cutting to later at the Grand Hotel Europe, which was actually shot at the Langham, London, Bond is doing laps in an oversized kiddie pool. He comes up, catches his breath, and kicks off, and he's halfway across to the other side. Okay, really, he's just floating, but it just really doesn't look like it at first.
Right? He's not really doing laps. You can't do laps in that pool. It's only 2 body lengths wide.
But they couldn't just have him doing nothing when they first came in, so it was like, do a half lap and then float. Bond feels the sauna activated with the Force and goes to investigate. And by investigate, I mean immediately grabs Xenia from her hiding spot and yanks her out. Because again, he has the Force now.
He doesn't need to check his corners. He can sense people.
The music has returned to that embarrassingly bad level. You don't need the gun, Commander. That depends on your definition of safe sex. Xenia jumps up and shoves her tongue down his throat. She bites his lip until he bleeds, and he pushes her against the wall.
She likes it rough.
She starts moaning and even feels pleasure when he kicks her. She just gets off on violence.
Yep.
She takes him down, and when he gets up, she jumps him from behind. He was walking away. Bond is not taking this seriously. It's not like he hasn't been physically attacked by females trying to murder him before.
Right. But he doesn't take this one seriously. He disregards her.
So weird.
She's just a girl.
She wraps her legs and starts squeezing. Bond is gasping, and she's squealing. He rams her against the wall over and over, and she's screaming, yes, yes, yes. And then he burns her ass on the sauna grill, and I have to hand it to her here. Femke makes a scream that perfectly sounds half like agonizing pain and half orgasm. Bond also buckets a dude in the head, but it happens faster than I just talked about it.
Yeah.
No. No more foreplay. Take me to Giannis. Cutting to later again, Xenia drives Bond in a 1990 Mercedes-Benz 230E to an old Soviet statue graveyard, Statue Park. Bond thanks her for the pleasant evening, and she sneers that the pleasure was again all his. You understand if I don't call. I won't lose any sleep over it, she says, and he judo chop knocks her out and says, sweet dreams. And overdoing it again.
Judo chop. Just so you people know, don't try to judo chop people unconscious. It very rarely works.
You might break your hand, though.
You might.
Bond gets out and spots the tiger. He walks through the fake junkyard of iconography until he hears, hello, James, in a familiar voice, and Alec Trevelyan walks out of the shadows with a half-burned face.
Oh my god, it's Alec Trevelyan. I thought he was dead.
Yanis, the two-faced god, back from the dead, no longer a star on the MI6 memorial wall. What's the matter, James? No glib remark, no pithy comeback?
Well, what's he supposed to say at this point? I thought you were dead. I'm glad you're not. Pour me a drink, old boy.
Buy me a pint for England. I don't know, I kind of liked it. He had been going off for a second.
Yeah.
It was one of the few times Bond was kind of speechless at first. He was just kind of like letting it soak in.
He was definitely speechless. Yeah.
Bond asks why, and Alec goes off. Apparently, they sacrificed everything, did everything, toppled dictators for a pat on the head. And he'd come home to a whole world he'd fought to save being changed. And he doesn't like change.
Apparently.
Alec tells Bond to drop the gun and points out that they're on the same level, and Alec has anticipated Bond's every move. Bond bemoans that he trusted Alec, and Alec laughs at the quaint concept. Alec says the British betrayed his family, and his father killed himself and his mother.
Well, hopefully not in that order, because how did that work out?
He shot himself in the gut and his mom in the head.
I guess that's one way.
The music has improved remarkably in quality, but I'll say it feels slightly too tender for this scene right now.
Yeah, I know. It's supposed to be some big reveal reunion, and the music just very incongruous.
It feels like the song that would be playing in an emotional scene later between him and the girl.
Kinda, yeah.
Alex says, I thought of asking you to come with me, but I knew 007's loyalty was always to the mission, never to his friend. Closing time, James. That's cool. James tries to raise his gun, hearing this, but is trank darted. Alex stands over him and says, for England, James. Which makes no sense.
Well, it would have if he was going to kill him right then.
I did that for England. No, you did it for you.
Hmm.
And it's just something they said because they said it and they keep saying it. But it doesn't actually mean anything at any point. That's why I was saying that one time. The closing time thing works. It works here. Bond knew it meant that whatever he was going to do, he was about to do it.
Yep.
But everything else, they're just saying over and over because they're hoping that establishes that they know each other. But they don't really mean anything.
Right.
Bond wakes up bound in the Tiger, with Natalia in the back kicking his chair, screaming at the top of her blood-curdling lungs. Wake up! Mister, we're gonna die. Get us out of here. I'm a little tied up. Dude, they just can't stop.
No, they won't stop.
He wakes up with 29 seconds to launch, fumbles around forever. They launch, fly off, circle back, and come to blow up the Tiger and kill them when he finally notices the giant fucking red button next to his head and perfectly in line with his goddamn eye sockets. He smashes the ejector button that's very poorly placed, and they soar over the exploding chopper and parachute safely back down. The things I do for frequent flyer mileage.
You would think that is the worst design for an ejection seat ever.
Bro, it's 100% the worst design.
If your head just gets flopped around by turbulence or something like that, you're getting ejected.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're wearing a helmet, you're hitting that button.
Bond and Natalia are then surrounded by the Russian army and taken prisoner. They take them to a holding cell in the Ministry of Defense, and Bond asks Natalia what she knows, which isn't much besides it was Urumov, which Bond suspects, and Boris was involved, which means nothing to Bond. Mishkin comes in asking Bond how he'd like to be executed. What, no small talk? No chit-chat? Bond jokes that no one takes the time to do a serious interrogation anymore, calling it a lost art. Mishkin threatens Bond while Bond tries to posit that it was an inside job, and Natalia calls them boys with toys, I guess. Natalia tells Mishkin that it was Urumov, and tells him that he stole the Goldeneye because there's another one. Mishkin thanks her, smiles, and says, You were saying something about the lost art of interrogation, Mr. Bond?
Mishkin's kind of a badass here.
Kinda. A little bit.
Yeah.
I wish he was faster badass. You know, maybe dove on Urumov when Urumov was taking the time to shoot the guard.
Right.
Ourumov on cue enters screaming, "This is out of order. This is my investigation." And Mishkin says, "You are out of order." And Ourumov takes Bond's gun and shoots Mishkin and the guard in the room, then throws the gun to Bond and screams for more guards.
Why didn't guards run in when they heard the shots?
We were waiting to make sure that it wasn't execution shots.
I guess.
This is Russia.
I guess shots just go off in Russian prisons frequently.
Yes. Bond kicks a chair under the general's feet and punches him. Shit gets hard to describe next. And I know you won't believe me, but there's so many rapid cuts and shaky cam that I think Bourne ripped off Bond now. It's amazing though. It's action-packed, it's thrilling and intense. 4 stars and other back-of-the-box quotes.
It's pretty well done. Lots of action. Definitely an improvement over the other Bond movies.
Guards enter and are summarily dealt with. The action's great and believable. Bond and Natalia make their way through the building trying to escape and shooting soldiers. They make their way to the archive and kick over the bookshelves to barricade the door, so the soldiers head to the lower level and start firing on Bond from underneath them. I say again, this is awesome, and Brosnan has never looked so cool and badass. Shit, I'd argue Bond never has, but I know that's gonna piss off some really loud people.
Fuck it, piss him off.
Bond gets his grappling belt and fires the piton. He doesn't care if it only holds one, but luckily for Bond, the writers save him by having Natalia fall through the floor grating to the soldiers below. So he swings on by himself, out the window, and onto a crash pad essentially, even in universe. We've said before and pointed out a million times over every single film so far, Bond's superpower is luck. And that's just bad writing. But we're glossing.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. But yes, superpower lucky.
Bond runs and hides behind a tank. Ourumov takes Natalia and gets in his black 1992 gas Volga. They take off. More soldiers swarm the grounds. Bond stares down a ZTS Martin T-55.
What do you think he's going to do with that tank, Matthew?
I think he's gonna fuck it.
I think he's going to fuck it good.
We cut to Uramov's driver, trying out for the Top Gear Stig, when the tank bursts through the wall behind them. The classic Bond theme hits, and it's iconic. The chase is epic. Mostly shot on a huge outdoor purpose-built St. Petersburg set in Cuppy wood, of course, but iconic.
Well, I bet Russia's not going to let you roll a T-55 through Russia, through the streets of St. Petersburg.
They were at first.
Really?
Yep. But then they got afraid that it was going to tear up their roads.
You would have definitely done that.
To me, the amazing thing is they built a spare St. Petersburg.
That is pretty dope.
Bond tears through the town, damaging buildings, flattening cars. Ourumov commands his driver to run over pedestrians. Use the bumper, that's what it's for. Jesus, bro. I mean, and they show it too, like people ragdolling.
Yeah, oh yeah. Professional stuntmen getting hit by a moving car.
At speed.
At speed. It's good shit.
Bond smashes through a truckload of Perrier cans and then into a statue of Tsar Nicholas on a Pegasus, which rides on top of the tank in a bit that, yeah, it's cheesy, but it's still badass, so it evens out.
I honestly think Pierce Brosnan had a Perrier contract at the time he was filming this movie.
Bond keeps plowing into anything and everything in his way, like this skyway he smashes his bronze passenger into. Ourumov, meanwhile, has made it to the Giannis train, a full-sized London commuter that they redressed as a Soviet monstrosity. And I do want to say that the sound mixing is my only complaint about the last sequence, and they even ADR in a line for Ourumov for no reason.
Really?
The train starts rolling, and inside we see Alec dining with Xenia behind him when Ourumov brings him Natalia. Alec is happy to have the girl, but angry when he learns that Bond escaped. Alec goes full creepo mode and starts forcing himself on Natalia out of nothing but jealousy and to make sure that he takes something that he thinks Bond has had. She's actually a pretty strong character for real though, and slaps the fuck out of him, screams at him.
I like the fact that she's a strong woman and it's not going to be just bandied about by the men of this movie.
They're like, I don't care who you are, you will back the fuck up. That was awesome. Ahead, a tank rolls out of a tunnel and blocks the tracks, and Xenia gets wet when she says, he's going to derail them. And Alex says, full speed, ram him. Bond fires at the train and leaps from the tank. The train collides with the tank, which explodes. And the train just kind of comes to a stop after, 2 or 3 cars length.
As always, considering the train was only 2 or 3 cars long, Anyway, let's move on.
Inside the train, Alec crawls towards an AK just to have Bond stand on it and over him. Why can't you just be a good boy and die? That's a badass line. You first. That's a badass comeback.
Couple of badass dudes. For once, Bond has met his equal.
But then he says, you second to Zinnia, and it's deflatingly lame.
Yeah.
Alex stands, saying, situation analysis, hopeless. No backup, no escape route, and I've the only bargaining chip. Oh, yes, your fatal weakness. Lovely girl. Tastes like strawberries. And Bond says that he wouldn't know, but Alex says that he would. Urumov brings Natalia in with a gun to her head, and Alex says, back where we started. The mission or your friend? Bond tells Urumov that Alec is a Lian's Cossack and will betray him, like he has everyone else.
So far, even the Iraqis.
Alec tells Urumov that all that matters is soon we'll have more money than God, and Mr. Bond will have a memorial service with only Moneypenny and a few tearful restaurateurs in attendance. So what's it gonna be? 2 targets, time enough for 1 shot, the girl or the mission? Kill her, Bond says. She means nothing to me. And Natalia winces. See you in hell, James, Alex says, and he and Zinnia bolt for it. And despite his bluff, Bond first turns to kill Urumov and save Natalia, letting the evil duo escape.
Now, this is the point where you look at Natalia and say, I was planning to do that the whole time, and you won't have to explain it further later in the movie.
Fuck it. Let's see if we survive the next 3 minutes first.
The
The doors slide closed and clamp shut. The train has an inch-thick armor plating. Bond desperately looks for a way out. Natalia, meanwhile, gets on Boris's terminal and sees that he's backing up his files from a remote location. If she can spike him, like he did earlier, she can find out where he is. Now don't stand there, get us out of here. Yes, sir, Bond says, and gets to it. And that's development from Dalton's character brought over. Amazing.
Yeah, it is pretty good, yeah.
Bond rips up the carpeting just as Alec radios over, saying, good luck with the floor, James. I set the timers for 6 minutes. Same 6 minutes you gave me. It's the least I could do for a friend. And laughs. Natalia asks what that means. Bond says they have 3 minutes, even though I proved Trevelyan had closer to 5.
Almost 6. Anyway.
At the very least, 4.5 minutes.
At the very least.
We cut to Boris, realizing he's being spiked, and does nothing to stop it, while Natty takes forever inputting the wrong passcodes over and over before Bond says chair. But she gets in, with Bond calling out the dwindling seconds. He kicks through the floor, and she sees they're in Cuba, before Bond rips her out of the train and they run away just before it explodes. They dive, as per 90s action movies, and she asks if he destroys every vehicle that he gets into. Standard operating procedure. Maybe I should take care of our travel arrangements to Cuba. Our trip? He says. Do you know how to disarm the weapon? I suppose that depends on what kind of weapon you're talking about. Then she asks if there's any other standard operating procedures that she should be aware of, and he says thousands, but he only pays them, and then he kisses her and says, lip service.
They just keep coming, folks. I'm telling you.
It doesn't stop.
It doesn't stop. But here's the thing. It's still all right.
The railway scenes were filmed in the Neen Valley Railway in Peterborough, which had previously been used in Octopussy. We cut to Cancun, Mexico, filmed in Puerto Rico. Cuba will also be filmed in Puerto Rico. Bond whips through the dirt roads in his BMW with the top down and the two relaxing and connecting. When out of nowhere, a fucking Cessna Skyhawk zooms over them with inches to spare and lands right in front of their speeding vehicle. The stunt pilot was Tom Danahan, 71 years old and not a day over 18. This guy nailed that shit.
He did an awesome job. That was a great stunt.
You can see when the plane turns after landing that there's a 71-year-old pilot for a second, though.
Oh, yeah, can you?
I also love how Bond's radar warned him 1 second before the plane was on top of them. What is it with you and moving vehicles? She asks. Wade pops out of the plane and calls Bond Jimbo again. Just, I need to go wash my mouth out with Sean Connery.
That sounded kinda...
I don't care. That's exactly what they sound like to me when they fucking sound that obsessed with one dude.
Yeah.
Wade gives Bond a paper bag with mines in it. A present for you from TZQ. What are you doing here, Wade? I'm not here. The CIA has no knowledge of anything you're doing in Cuba. Who are you? Who am I? Who's Mitchell? Oh, look, banyan trees. Oh, by the way, when Wade first met Bond, he asked him offhand if Bond does any gardening and mentioned banyan trees here. Almost unnoticeable now. It's been cut so much, but deleted scenes have him jabbering on and on and on about plants. Wade loves plants.
Wade loves plants.
Natalia takes Wade's charts of Cuba and he asks who she is. Bond says, Minister of Russian Transportation. Did you check her out? Head to toe. Bond slyly smirks. Right. Wade gives Bond his Cessna and says, head down the runway and Cuba's 80 miles on your right. He heads to Bond's BMW to drive off in it. Bond says, don't touch any of the switches. I'm just going to go bombing around in it. Exactly. This movie is awesome, and so is Joe Don Baker.
Joe Don Baker's pretty cool.
And it's not just better quality film stock and color grading. It's knowing how to keep people into frame, when, and how long to hold. Effective emotional uses of zooms. I already mentioned the blocking is intentionally meant to make you feel as if you're next to these people. This movie even nails, finally, the levity that they've been trying to attain since Goldfinger, without it detracting from the thrilling realism. They do everything they've tried before, but it works this time. It's balanced properly, and it's not cheesy, usually. It's badass.
Mostly.
Natalia finds Bond brooding on a beach, and they have a touching moment over Bond facing having to kill his friend that reveals a lot about how both characters value life and others. Then they bang.
Before the train, Natalia had no fucking reason to stay with James Bond or any of these government services. She was out. And now she just suddenly fell in love. They bang a couple of times, and now she's the Bond girl.
Yeah, you could totally walk away. But at that point, she realized that, like, she was probably the only person who could help save the world after Mishkin got
self-interest. That's all I'm saying. She could have walked away.
So could he in the beginning, and when it was just a race. I feel like she has more investment and connection than he did.
Well, yeah, she's got a revenge thing, because they did kill all her friends.
Her work wife. Yep, she has the skills and the motivation. After they bang, she asks him if he meant what he said on the train, to kill her. She means nothing to him. And Bond says yes. The basic rule, always call their bluff. Good lesson, Teach. Hope that doesn't bite you.
Right?
The next day, they're flying over Cuba and staying hella low to avoid radar. But it doesn't matter. As they fly over a lake in the mountains, a missile flies up and into their wing. Bond crashes into the jungle and pulls himself and the girl out of the plane. Bond lies down in the jungle and loses consciousness. And he wakes up just in time to see a Eurocopter Ecruil 2 with Xenia about to rappel down onto them. And he happened to just wake up in time. Bond's superpower is luck. We say perfect escape plans, catching cars on foot. All these superpowers we point out are actually all just luck. Like how he runs into plot integral devices and characters in every movie, or has his life saved by dumb luck in every other one.
Well, yeah, I was going to obviously say, it's like they were completely ready to give up their search until their plane got shot down over the lake they were looking at. No hope. London's doomed. We can't find the plane. Oh, what's that? A missile?
Just like You Only Live Twice, when it was like, well, if you would have left him alone, he would have been fine. Well, now there's a bunch of helicopters chasing me. What's going on now?
Right?
Xenia drops on Bond as he stands, knocking him down again. She kicks him around and says, this time, Mr. Bond, the pleasure will be all mine. And then she licks him before giving him the squeeze. Natalia tries to attack her, but is told to wait her turn before being headbutted. Bond seizes the moment and grabs her AK to kill the pilot of the helicopter that Xenia is still attached to via rope. The chopper goes down, pulling Xenia, who gets caught in the trunk of a tree and crushed to death when the rope keeps pulling. She always did enjoy a good squeeze. What a touching eulogy.
Right? Not the silliest death scene, but kinda. It's just, again, the physics breaks me.
The physics of that break you?
The human body can't hold a helicopter down.
That's why it squished her to death. Are you mad that it didn't rip her in half?
It should have just folded her in two and pulled her right through that.
It would have just sliced through her torso.
Yeah, the weakest point of her body.
It's the only spot where the only bones holding you together is your spinal cord.
Yeah.
Inside the secret base, Alec asks Boris about the satellite, and Boris says 6 minutes. And Alec says prepare the dish. Boris says it's too early, and that he's not ready. And Alec says do it, and scowls, and walks away, leaving Boris to sulk in his inflated ego. This scene tells you so much about Boris's narcissism, and we already know him to be a sociopath that doesn't care about sexualizing women to their faces or getting his friends killed.
No, Boris is a child, 100%. And,
He's a narcissistic sociopath.
yes, he is. And he wants to be in charge, but knows he isn't.
Yep.
And can't beat the man in charge, so.
Outside, Bond sees pylons rising, and out of the lake rises the dish. It's a cross between the base, under the fake lake and You Only Live Twice, and the rising Atlantis from The Spy Who Loved Me. The lake does keep bubbling in the center when nothing's coming out of it anymore, though.
It does do that.
It's also a fucking 100-foot wide model of the Arecibo Space Telescope in Puerto Rico, where a lot of the climax was filmed. RIP.
Oh, poor Arecibo. But yeah, it's been in more movies than any other radio telescope.
Like Contact?
Yeah.
The heroes run up to the emerging dish, and the compositing is amazing. And wow, I never thought I'd say that.
It's good, right?
It's
The
good
compositing-
here,
it
especially in
is.
this scene. That's flawless.
Right?
Back with Alec, he hands Boris the Goldeneye plate and says, "The world's greatest cash card. It better not be rejected." And Boris snatches it and looks pissed. He does not like being in a submissive position.
He's not used to being submissive. He's used to being in black leather and have a tail.
Outside, they pump water through the base of the bowl of the dish model and then reverse the footage. At the real Arecibo, they let stunt actors slide down it over and over and then stitch the footage together. Jesus, how long is this dish?
It's huge. And yeah, that's a thing.
After being shot at and diving down the forever dish, Bond catches himself and her just at the edge of a nasty drop that probably wouldn't have killed them, but there wouldn't have been any up and saving the world after either.
Yeah, no. No, it probably wouldn't have killed him. But they definitely would have broke a bunch of shit.
I was like, there goes both your legs. They're just down there like, please help. Ambulance. The wound is starting to smell like almonds.
My hip.
Also, the compositing here with the pit is not as good. I shouldn't say it's bad compositing, though. It's not, especially compared to the past. I should say it's obvious compositing.
I was just going to say, yes, it's obvious compositing, kind of like Empire Strikes Back. It's a great movie. The compositing was good, but it was obvious.
But it was the best that anyone had done back then.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm saying that this is the best that anyone's done in a Bond movie ever.
Back inside, Boris lets Alec know the antenna is in position, and Alec says the target is London. They arm the bomb and set target. Man, the Earth is glowing an odd blue.
It's painted, isn't it?
Weird, it's glowing. Alec says, "God save the Queen," and we cut to the heroes infiltrating the compound. Natalia spies the mainframe terminal, and Bond doesn't hesitate. He jumps out shooting and running to take cover while drawing the guards away from her.
Yes, he does.
Bond shoots a few guards as more swarm in. In the chaos, he fires at a tank, sets up the mines, and then slides his gun out before coming out, arms raised in surrender. The guards take him away, and no one notices the beeping mine. Okay, sure. But how does no one notice the pouring liquid filling the floor and spilling over onto the main floor as we see in this shot? And when they sent someone to clean it, wouldn't they find the mines?
Oh my god. You're in an open air lab. Does nobody smell fuel?
It's spilling over a whole floor.
In an open lab full of fucking scientists. Does not one notice the vapor of fuel in the room? Hey, what's this dripping down from up there?
Axe body spray.
Does that smell like gas?
Bond is brought to Alec and his belongings placed on the console. James, what an unpleasant surprise. We aim to please. Alec asks where the girl is, and James says nothing. Find her, Alec commands before rifling through what was found on Bond. He picks up the pen and asks how old Q is. Still up to his usual tricks. So he bloody knows full well not to play with that pen, and that's a plot hole, and it's not a tiny one, in service of a throwaway line.
Yes, he knows bloody full well not to play with that pin. And I was wondering the same thing. It's like, why would he just let him pick that pin up?
Alec is almost as good as he thinks, though, and that's still scary. He takes Bond's watch and, seeing the blinking red light, says, "Still press here, do I?" and he uses Bond's watch to disarm whatever mines Bond's planted. But he also doesn't immediately have people go try and find them, which I think is dumb. I mean, they're disarmed, yes, but there's still random hidden explosives in your work base now.
Right, right. I didn't know what his play was right here.
It was odd.
Very.
Or dumb. Let's just say it.
Yep.
There's an establishing insert of the soldiers looking for the girl running past the office she's in as she hacks Misha. Back with Bond, who looks at Boris's monitors and figures it out. Well, to be fair, it's pretty obvious now. They're hacking into the Bank of England and transferring all the money. All of it. Then they're setting off the Goldeneye over London to cover up the crime. It's very Goldfinger, steal the currency and set off a bomb to further damage the country you're stealing it from. Yes, it's extremely Diamonds Are Forever, but less that movie and more like if they were actually using the satellite. See what I mean? It's not a ripoff or a redo of any one movie. It's a perfect blend of pieces that were also tweaked instead of carbon copied.
And they did a good job.
A little Easter egg that I noticed here in this scene, the bank that they're transferring to is the Pevsner Commerzbank. A little shout out to our nuts and bolts man.
Oh, right on.
Another thing is I'm sure Mike loved Die Hard, and I'm pretty sure this next bit was, we'll say, inspired by that film, when Bond says that he's nothing but a bank robber, a common thief. The delight on Boris's face, by the way, when Bond says this, he is relishing Alec taking knocks, as Alec has constantly bruised his own narcissistic ego. And I never noticed how brilliant and nuanced this secondary character was before, but Alan Cummings is actually acting circles around most of the people next to him, and we never notice because he's that fucking natural. Now, don't get me wrong, he knows he's a goon in a Bond movie, but he's brilliant, and he's one of the reasons that we could take Bond goons and henchmen so much more seriously than just the movie before. Him and Benicio.
Absolutely. Alan Cummings is a great supporting actor. He gets into the role and disappears.
The soldiers find Natalia, but she's already done her damage. Back with Alec, and he's saying, yeah, I'm taking all their money, but it's not just that. Land, bank, and tax records, stock market, credit ratings, criminal records. The entire UK is about to re-enter the Stone Age, and the world will have a financial meltdown, which will completely devalue all the money you're stealing, you idiot.
I don't think you thought this plan all the way completely through.
I need a lot of toilet paper. Expensive, pretty toilet paper.
Expensive, pretty toilet paper.
I want to spend all this on one loaf of bread. No one else can have bread.
Like, you didn't think your plan all the way through, homie.
If it was just happening for revenge, but the bank thief part, we should have just left that out. He shouldn't care about the money.
Right.
And it makes it stupid that he does.
Yeah.
Because now it's like you're stealing money that you're going to completely devalue.
Yep.
Because you just said you want to crash the world economy. Okay, whatever.
Okay, whatever.
So if this happened in 2023, oh yeah, I mean, everything that he's about to hit with that EMP is gone. But in 1995, I'm going to tell you, most of that you need to believe was still ultimately paper logged. It took me a day to download a picture of Spider-Man on AOL.
Oh, yeah. Most of the infrastructure in the world actually was still kind of hardened against EMPs. They still use tubes on a lot of shit in 95. Just saying.
Bond chides Alec for burning the world for petty childish revenge 50 years on. Alec scoffs, spare me the Freud. But just to let you know, Josef Breuer developed, coined, and suggested the use of emotional catharsis, or cathartic method, to Freud.
Okay.
I'm just saying, like, I'm so sick of everyone's like, oh, that's the name I know, so is Freud. And also everything Freud said was true, and we attribute every kind of...
Freud was a cocaine addict.
Who said himself that his own methods were basically wrong.
Questionable.
At best.
Yeah.
Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. You literally just told me that they're supposed to be a penis. Guys don't want to fuck their moms. We don't. What he misunderstood there is that prepubescent, before you actually have a sex drive driven by hormones to reproduce, the closest analogy that you have to that is the desire you feel from the safety of your mother. And so prepubescent males tend to crush or admire people that they could see as some kind of maternal replacement. And this is why they often look like their mothers. And yet, every crush that I had before puberty looked like my mom. And every girl that I slept with after puberty looked nothing like my mom.
Freud was wrong with me because I had never crushed on anybody who looked like my mom.
Boom.
ever.
And it's because it's not true.
Right.
If you want to fuck your mom, you have issues.
You got issues.
When brought in, Natalia jumps Boris because he's a little bitch. They knock into Bond's belongings, and when the guards pull her off of him, Boris is now playing with Bond's pin, spinning it and clicking it randomly. Oh, and I guess I should mention that he's always been playing with a pin. It's a tick of his.
It's a tick of mine.
Alex smiles at a girl beating up Boris because they hate each other. Boris says that she couldn't have done anything in the system, though, because she's a moron, a second-level programmer on the guidance system. But Boris is an idiot because she programmed the guidance to move off course and into the atmosphere. And she also reset the codes.
Because she's smart. She's kind of literally a rocket scientist.
Literally. Boris gets to typing, trying desperately to get back in, spinning and clicking the pen. Alec grabs Bond and puts a gun to his head, and Natty says, "Go ahead, shoot him. He means nothing to me." And Bond's face is like, "Welp, I deserve that." He raised his eyebrows and everything.
He did have the face of, well, she's right.
And he's like, "You got me there, you bitch. I did say call their bluff." Boris gets on trying to break her code, spinning and clicking, Bond counting. Because Bond's superpower is luck, he doesn't just blow everyone up randomly. And he also gets up frustrated, throwing the pen in Eddie's face, screaming for the codes just after clicking the perfect amount to set the fuse. So now Bond, even with a gun to his cheek, can swipe the bomb away just in time and up to the flammable liquid and mines that he left upstairs that no one still doesn't seem to notice, hear, or smell.
Oh, Lord. Not one scientist, not one rocket scientist in this lab was like,
Do you guys smell kerosene?
like, you smell that? What is that?
It smells flammable, I'll tell you that, bro.
And it was gallons. It wasn't a little tiny leak. It wasn't like a puddle on the floor. It is pouring out.
It's coming over the edge in a mini waterfall. How do y'all not even... what the hell? You could hear it.
Right? Nobody hears that? Not one person. Not the guy walking by.
No, because it's exploding base time. And Jesus, this is not a slow build. No one's grabbing fucking papers. They getting blown up.
They're getting blown the fuck up. The stunt work by the extras in this was magnificent, by the way, if you weren't paying attention. They were just grabbing each other, falling all over each other. It was pretty nice.
It's been excellent the whole time. Trust me, they got hit by a car.
Yeah.
Ragdolled.
Yes, they did.
Bond and Natty take a lift to the antenna array, and Bond arms her for protection and then tells her to get to safety. He then runs to the array. Alec finds a construction cage attached to a production crane, and they swing him up. He fires at Bond from below before Bond returns fire and expends the AK he was carrying. Alec gets on the platform and continues firing at Bond, causing Bond to dive down the platform stairs in a really sweet maneuver.
Doing a somersault down a flight of metal stairs. That's some fucking Johnny Knoxville shit right there.
That looked like it hurt.
A lot.
No matter how well you landed it and rolled.
It doesn't matter. That looked like it hurt.
Bond dives into the gear room just as Boris gains access and tries to save the satellite. Yes, everything's exploding around him, but there's a guard drawn on him with orders to fire if he moves. So back in the gear room, the array starts turning, and Alec bursts in for a quick scuffle before Bond tosses him down some stairs while shooting him. Bond then shoves a large pipe into the gears, beginning the destruction of the array itself, and then follows a blood trail to find Alec.
Yeah. I guess it would blow up. I just like the fact that everything blows up in this movie, regardless of what happens to it.
It was primed and ready to be made into a video game.
Oh, man. Was it ever?
In an electrical control room, they find each other and round 2, fight. This fight is awesome, though. They're both young, they're fast, they're agile. The choreography is the best, period, that we've ever seen in a Bond film for a thrilling, action-packed fight, and it's very believable.
Yeah.
It does cut like crazy, though, and the camera never stops moving.
It does cut like crazy.
This really is that same style we'll give Bourne credit for inventing, but really they just turned it up to 11.
Yeah, they did. Bourne turned it up to 11, but this is pretty much the same style.
Yeah, but it's not so egregious here. The fight is compelling and intense. It feels dangerous and desperate. It feels evenly matched.
Well, this is supposed to be Bond's equal, and...
Is.
As for a bad guy, he is.
This guy feels like a legitimate threat to Bond's life. He even gets the upper hand and draws on Bond and says that he was always better, as Bond kicks out the hatch underneath him and he rides 3 stitched-together painter's ladders down a green screen.
That whole time during that whole fight scene, I was like, I knew in my mind what those ladders were stacked there for, but they just looked so out of place, stacked there in the middle of all of this other equipment. I was like, why are there painter's ladders right there?
Why are there painter's ladders? So weird. Why did
so
y'all
weird.
use those? Bond starts climbing the ladder back up, but Alex slides down on him, knocking Bond to the very bottom of the ladder, dangling by his fingers. And there's a small platform at the bottom of the array, and I was wondering, like, why didn't you just, swing down onto it for a controlled landing and then be in a stable position to push Alec off when he tried to follow?
Because it's so much more dramatic if I hang by my fingertips, Matthew, and then fall onto the platform.
Oh, okay, because Bond doesn't do what I said. He does what Carter said. And he just hangs there, showing off that ungodly grip strength again. And Alex stamps on his fingers over and over. Bond finally drops down to the platform anyways, but almost falls off of it. He should have just dropped.
He should have just dropped before Alec got there. I was wondering the same thing. It's like, isn't that what the ladder's for, is to get down there and do maintenance?
Is swinging over from his hands and hugging it would have been safer than like landing on the back and barely hanging on with the wire, the guide wire.
Yeah, definitely.
I want to point out that they established Natty finding a Eurocopter Ekrowil 2 and sneaking aboard before it takes off to provide support for Alec on the array. And yes, it's the same one they filmed Zinnia's death with, but not in universe. Just in real life.
In real life, I see.
Alec is over Bond, threatening to push him off. The chopper flies next to them, but the pilot is taken hostage by Natty, and none of this fucking matters. Her being there or not changed nothing, and the chopper being there for support only distracted Alec enough for Bond to headbutt Alec off of him and kick Alec off the platform. Great support.
You didn't support anything. You're supposed to be a gunship support, and I don't even think you have guns.
Bond dives to catch Alec's boot for no reason but to have these cool lines. Maybe it's for some kind of psychotic closure.
Ah, no, it's to get the last word.
For England, James? Alec asks. No, for me. And drops him. Splat! But he's still alive. Shot him in the face, dropped him off the array. How many times are we going to kill Sean Bean in this movie? I lied. 3.
3 times.
Okay, I guess it's good Natty got the chopper after all, because Bond leaps for it just as the array collapses and lets his grip strength and blind luck take him home to another chlamydia-free random girl. Wait, what?
Yeah, hopefully. We don't know how many times James Bond's been down to the infirmary.
Free clinic.
Yeah.
Alex screams as he watches the array crash onto him, and the main base collapses as well. Somehow Boris survived this and screams with elation, "Yes, I am invincible!" as large tanks of liquid nitrogen burst all over him, freezing him to death.
Oh, that's where I know this guy from. He is Nightcrawler. I couldn't tell until he was blue.
Bond drops, and she jumps out, and the chopper pilot cheeses it. Most realistic dude in this movie.
Mm-hmm. I am not hanging around with all these psychopaths.
No, for real. Leah's like, oh, yeah. You take me hostage. You jumped out. I'm out. Ah, bitch.
My question was, why didn't she force him to land, Bond get back on, kick the pilot off, and they just fly away? Why did she jump out? That was kind of dumb.
To be fair, she normally programs a satellite move like its thruster a little bit of an angle and fire for 2 seconds. I'm really happy she was as strong and capable as she was. I'm not going to hold her to that standard that she didn't think, oh, yeah, maybe I need this helicopter. In fact, she's probably thinking, you take this helicopter and get it far away. I don't want to be in it with him. At least not without some more people protection.
Fair.
They roll around in the grass and Bond assures her that there's no one for 25 miles. Yo, Jimbo, Wade corrects him as Wade walks up in wonder of the tobacco plants around him. He calls for his Marines and a platoon pop up from the foliage around them. They were surrounded by people. 25 miles, huh, super spy?
To be fair, these are Marines.
Wade offers them to finish debriefing each other at Guantanamo, and no thanks.
Right?
I don't like hot cock meat sandwiches and waterboards.
Can you get us straight to the mainland, please?
She understandably doesn't want to get in a helicopter or plane with Bond actually aboard, with his vehicle track record. But they laugh, and he carries her to a pair of Bell Iroquois choppers, and they fly off into the sky, not banging, for like the first time ever.
For the first time ever, you're right. This is the first time there's been a Bond ending where he's not banging the girl at the end.
He's just her and them. They're just riding off with a bunch of other people. Like, good job.
Right. Or maybe they are banging. Maybe they're into public
Maybe they're putting on a show in that helicopter.
Right
yeah.
in the middle of the helicopter. Yeah.
Wade's like, got the popcorn out. When I called you a stiff-ass Brit, that's not what I meant, but hey.
But hey.
I'm giving this movie an A. Solid A. I've bent your ears sideways about how this movie is a giant leap in every imaginable way. With all the original crew passing and retiring, they were almost forced to bring in new blood, but it was desperately needed. Times had changed, and Bond needed to. This was the best Bond movie that you could have made in the 90s. It looks great. It's action-packed. It's cool, witty, snappy, almost never cheesy or too over the top. This is the movie that they've been trying to make, at the very least, since Roger came on. It's funny, and the banter never stops, but it's badass, and it doesn't ruin him as a serious action star for me. Everyone is amazing. It introduced the best M. Brosnan was born to play Bond. Alec Trevelyan is an amazing villain who can match Bond for real and has relatable motivations. How many of you wanted to hurt the people who hurt you? It's an amazing movie, and the flaws, for me, are forgettable next to its brilliance.
I, too, gave this movie an A. This movie was light years ahead of all of the movies behind it. It's just hard to explain how much better this movie was. I mean, even from the opening scene, which is iconic and just took me straight to the Goldeneye video game, to all of the Foley work. If you didn't notice, all of the Foley work in this movie was in the game. Straight down to the sound the mines made, all of it. Every sound. This movie was fantastic. It was well done, well shot, well acted. Pierce Brosnan nailed it like he'd been waiting to do this for a whole season of Remington Steele.
Bro, he went out like the third string quarterback, just got his chance, and he was going to prove why he should be first string next year.
Right?
For the kill count, how many do you think Bond kills in this movie?
23.
47. And 25 others die for a grand total of 72. We are definitely getting back into the bloodier days again, but still nowhere near our records. The pre-title is amazing. It's fucking iconic. It has a spectacular location and multiple jaw-dropping stunt set pieces. There's intrigue, stealth tension, action and adventure. It perfectly sets up the movie and its two main players, offering us more than who they are and why they are doing what they're doing, but showing us their personal connections and equal skill sets. I have zero complaints at all about the pre-title. First place.
I hate it when I agree with you all the time, but I do. Because this pre-title sequence, as soon as I got done watching it and taking my notes for the day, I went and played Goldeneye. Because I needed to play.
It hit those nostalgia berries.
Right, you can't watch that pre-title sequence and not want to jump off that dam, son. It's just the way it is. This pre-title sequence is not only iconic, it is probably the best pre-title sequence in a James Bond movie. First place, oh yes, definitely first place.
For the title.
As good as it was, I didn't dig on the theme as much. The graphics of the title sequence, fucking magnificent.
I do not know how you, like, the last so many songs where you're like, yeah, and I'm like,
Yeah,
but, like, this is a much better song, and she's part of the culture.
I wanted to like the song more. Fifth place.
Dang.
Visually stunning, but the song, yeah.
The song, for me, is a stunning, belting blast that perfectly fits the mood of the film. The titles are the best we've seen so far, and I'm sorry, Maurice, but this kid grew up with computers and the lessons of greats like yourself. It's thematically perfect, gorgeous titles. First place.
Nice.
Moneypenny pickup line. James and Moneypenny trade risque hooks with each other that purposefully and sarcastically dance over the line that HR would not approve of. She's very sharp and barbish to him in a playful way that seems more sexually confident than coy. But she still wants him. First place.
Mm-hmm. I gave this scene a third place because it is by far one of the strongest, but I feel that Moneypenny's been kind of just the flirtiness has been better in a couple of other movies. But third place.
Q gadgets. Q gives Bond a new car. He gives Bond a grappling belt. Mines. A new watch with a bloody laser. There's a spy monocular camera with Wi-Fi. A car printer with Wi-Fi. There's a fucking exploding pen. He even says he's giving Bond a document X-ray scanner, but doesn't. But I think that's how he found out about Zukovsky's arm deal to offer to sanction it, and all that just got cut. But that's just a guess, it's not confirmed. And still, gadgets are awesome. They're either real then, now, or plausible for the future. First place.
It was very hard for me not to give this particular outing of Q first place. And that's only because there wasn't enough Q in it. It was very short. And that's the only reason that Thunderball's still on top and Goldeneye is in second place.
Cars. Bond dusts off the 64 Aston DB5, but his main ride this time is the 1995 BMW Z3 convertible. Fully equipped, of course. 7th place.
I gave it 6th place because you see the BMW, but then you don't. It's just like none of the cars were really in this movie, so 6th place. They were there, but not really.
Main ally, Jack Wade, CIA, a horticulturally obsessed, brash, and blunt American. He's adept and very capable, though. You need a meet and greet? Boom. Goodies from home? Gotcha, fam. A plane and someone to take your car? No worries. The Marines? We're already here. Don't tell anyone. 6th place.
I gave him 7th place. I mean, I really like Jack Wade. He's more on it than Felix Leiter ever has, and Felix Leiter is James Bond's best friend.
The hilarious thing is he almost really is like, what if Brad Whitaker was a good guy?
Right?
The same brash American attitude, and that's just Joe Don Baker, and you gotta love it. If you love Joe Don Baker, you'll love this guy. Villains. Alec Trevelyan, former 006 in Leon's Cossack, a man that feels betrayed by Bond because his act of betrayal got screwed up, and is about to flip the table rage quit the entire world over it. Oh, and he wants all the money. He's deranged enough to be dangerous and stable enough to be very dangerous. He's skilled and almost never not in control of himself. He's every bit an equal to Bond. Well, maybe just a little less than, or he'd be alive. His history is rich, and we can connect well to him, and to how Bond feels towards him. 2nd place.
I gave him 3rd place. He is a very capable villain.
He just lacks charisma.
Yeah.
That's all he doesn't have going for him. He just doesn't have charisma.
Right?
Main hench, Xenia Onatop, an ex-Russian fighter pilot and right-hand woman to the Giannis leader. To say she has a lust for violence would be the literal understatement of the year. She's super deadly, fast, and powerful. She's the most capable and dangerous we've ever seen a femme fatale at this point, and literally gets off on violence. 1st place.
Wow. You gave her 1st place, huh?
I did, because I believe that she's capable and dangerous. She's fast, fit, young, and once again, we are benefiting from some of the best blocking, choreography, and cinematography to help make these people feel believable and dangerous in their fights.
I ranked her on a top number 5 because I didn't feel that she beat out Benicio del Toro's henchman. He was psychotic with purpose. She was just psychotic.
But he had like no screen time and didn't really do much besides get thrown into a chipper. And she actually felt like a credible threat to me, like I said, because of the how much better they are at presenting.
I think he just had more screen presence for me than she did. She's sexy and hot and everything. I just think her villain was a little over the top.
Bond girl, Natalia Semyonova, a Russian satellite programmer that joins Bond after being betrayed to help save the world when the dangerous satellite weapon she was assigned to is stolen. She doesn't say typical strong female lines or even come off that physically threatening, but she's smart and knows how to use a gun and will fight if she has to, even to save Bond. It's just how she holds herself and her willingness to bark commands like it's nothing. She just comes off as one of the most naturally strong Bond girls yet, not because she's saying the strong girl line. More importantly, she's the one who finds and stops the Goldeneye weapon. 1st place.
I gave Natalia 2nd place. She was probably the most capable Bond girl that I've come across, aside from Domino. Which I know she's a little more capable than Domino, but I got a crush on her.
Domino, the weak use victim who finally shot her captor, but it is more like a caged animal reaction than anything else, and that's all she contributed. And that's the better version?
Wait, maybe.
You and I have very differing opinions of this film, but that's okay. You keep doing your differing opinion.
Yeah.
but I'm just blown away sometimes. One-liner. God, where to begin with this one? So many and many amazing cool one-liners. Pick one. Pick any of them. Forgot to knock. Good squeeze. Standard operating procedure. No more foreplay. The next girl. I'm going with be a good boy and die. And Bond says, you first. I like you first. But I mean, really, it's all of them that make this movie just get that top spot for one-liners. First place.
Very cool. I did not give this movie first place for one-liners. I gave this one actually fifth place. That's pretty much standard that where this movie is ranking for me. In the high fives, low fours, most things. Fifth place. They were all very good. But, there's a couple movies where the one-liners were, there were too many, and there's a couple movies where the one-liners were just sparse, and that one perfect one-liner. You know what I'm saying?
For me, that's better, so I'm not going to argue with you.
Yeah, to me, that's better. So, I gave it fifth place, and I gave it the worst of the one-lines, but it was so, touching to my heart. It was Q and Bond bonding in that fatherly role that Desmond Llewellyn's taking on. And don't say it, the writing's on the wall, and the rest of them.
I can't believe you're bringing up that shit song. That's a sore spot for me.
Yeah.
Locations. Russia, Monaco, Cuba, with a stop in Cancun. The locations are jaw-dropping, from the dam in the opening and the mountain leap to cap the sequence, all the way to the Arecibo telescope and everywhere in between. Monaco, though some shot in France, and Cuba, shot in Puerto Rico, looked amazing. I just wish they were shown off a little bit more, as the rest of the movie's exteriors were usually drab outdoors for London and St. Petersburg. The interior locations were all immaculate works of architectural and design art, though. The sets were masterfully made, and you can't tell usually what's a set in the giant factory that they used as a studio and what's location shooting. Sixth place.
I gave this a fifth place. The locations were amazing. Everything was well shot, well done. They weren't so audacious. The sets and locations weren't so audacious as I was like, whoa. Except for the church, which I was like, whoa. And
That was an actual location.
that was an actual location. That's why I was like, wow, that place is magnificent. Anyway, the locations were really good. It was really good. They made great use of it. Great use of them. Good storytelling. Even though Puerto Rico was Cuba, but still looked good.
Projected attempt to kill Bond. They shove Bond in a Tiger helicopter, program it to wait an asinine amount of time, then fire missiles to double back on itself to kill him and Natty. And just pray that he doesn't notice the big red escape button next to his head. It's still exciting, though. Fourth place.
We agree. I also gave this one fourth place. Other than putting a bullet in both of them before they did that little stunt to set them up as the people who stole the helicopter, which made perfect sense. It would have made perfect sense. Oh, they didn't know how the rockets worked, and boom, they blew themselves up. Whatever. Other than that, not putting a bullet in them just to make sure, it was a really solid plan. They didn't count on Bond waking up and hitting the big red ejection button with his head.
Didn't think they counted on Eurocopter to have the worst ejection system ever.
The ejection system's probably pretty sound. The mechanism to make it function is stupid.
Mission. Find out who stole a Russian EMP satellite and stop them. Oh, and it's your old partner. Which is trope, but done so well here, it added so much weight to the conflict. Fourth place.
I gave this one a little lower than fourth place. It's a sixth place for me. Because part of the mission for me and plot is the overall arching villain's plan, and his plan was bad.
His plan was really great. It's just they added one line that made it stupid in the end when they tried to throw the bank robber thing on the end. When it was just fine, and it was revenge, and it was crashing the systems, and it was flipping the table on the whole world. That was great. That was 100% fine. In fact, it was one of the best ever because, as I said before, it's incredibly relatable. How many of you have wanted to hurt the person who's hurt you? When someone hurts you, you want to hurt them. The take the money part, really, I will give you that. It makes it stupid. Especially considering that money is going to be completely fucking worthless as soon as you do the other part.
Right.
Stunts.
The stunt work in this movie was fantastic. Modern. Up to date. Some compositing, as you say, but otherwise really good. I gave it second place.
The compositing was just obvious, not terrible, though.
Right, obvious, not terrible.
And not even obvious in some places.
Yeah, not even obvious in some places. So, yes, second place. Because I understand the necessity of what it takes to do stunts underwater, and that's you're gonna have to really blow me away to beat that.
The stunts are literally awe-inspiring, jaw-dropping shit. I would have given this first place to begin with, and then I saw Uramov's car ragdolling people with his bumper, and I was sold. First place. Score.
If not for the odd bits of music in this, it might have been a little higher. I gave the score a 7th place. It was disjointing sometimes with that music. That odd choice of Casio keyboard music.
I felt very oddly similar. I wrote, this is difficult because outside of like 3 instances, the score is mesmerizing. It's, to wear the word out, iconic. Anyone my age can play these tunes in our heads. A couple of these songs, though, it just kind of felt like they didn't have enough music, so they paid $5 for some 90s stock TV show music and said, screw it. 4th place. Would have been first if not for those 3 terrible songs. Movie.
Overall, this movie is going to be in a solid 5th place right now. We'll see how the rest of Pierce Brosnan's fairings rank out. But right now, this is a solid 5th place.
Before I started this series, I was sure From Russia with Love was my favorite Bond movie. Which one look at the rankings show, these deep dives have proved myself wrong. This is my generation's movie. This was impactful and nostalgic as fuck for me. But I still would never have guessed that I'd rank it higher than everything that came before it. But I did, because it's 3 scratches off a masterpiece, and probably the best fun, comedic action Bond balance in the franchise still to this day. I myself prefer more realism to levity, but I understand the allure to those who prefer comedy in their fun Bond adventures. This is your film. First place.
This is your film.
And as they said, Bond will return, and so will we. Until then,
I'm Agent Carter.
And I'm Agent Sedgwick.
Stay spying, y'all.